Did you know Sophie Turner is reuniting with her Game of Thrones co-star Kit Harington in a brand new gothic horror movie called The Dreadful? But this time, instead of playing siblings, they're playing lovers. And even Sophie admits it feels really weird. She said, "I did a movie last year with my old, but very good friend, Kit Harington." Sophie told Vogue in an interview published July 16th. "He played my brother, and now we're doing a gothic horror where we play lovers." She laughed and added, "Sorry guys, it's really weird for all of us." The Gendry actor said, "The most common thing Thrones fans have wanted to talk to me about over the years was the suggested relationship with Arya," Dempsey said. "I always found that conversation quite uncomfortable at the time, particularly in the early years. I was a 25-year-old man being asked whether I would like my character to get together with an at the time 14-year-old actress. It was something I thought wasn't fair to ask me personally. When Arya and Gendry finally had a scene in season 8, a lot of fans were suddenly shocked. Arya had never been portrayed in a sexual way before, and many viewers had literally watched Maisie Williams grow up on screen." Dempsey found the public reaction quite revealing. What the scene ended up doing was forcing people to confront their own hypocrisy in a way, and then the majority of us start having but we still find it difficult to watch someone else make the journey. Before filming Game of Thrones Season 4, Nikolaj Costa played a prank on HBO by pretending he'd shaved his iconic golden hair. He sent them an old photo of himself with a buzz cut, claiming he'd taken creative control of Jaime's look for artistic integrity. HBO didn't find it funny. They believed him, called his manager, and even discussed legal action. "It got out of control," he admitted. Ironically, Jaime did get a shorter haircut that season. So, in the end, Costa's joke partially came true. The Game of Thrones cast received the final season scripts all at once, secured with heavy passwords. After nearly a decade of waiting, they finally learned their characters' fates. Sophie Turner read hers in one sitting and felt numb, while Emilia Clarke rushed home overwhelmed, calling the experience profound. Peter Dinklage, for the first time, didn't skip ahead to see if Tyrion survived. Kit Harington refused to read the scripts beforehand, choosing to discover the story with his castmates. The team later gathered in Belfast for the final read-through. When Game of Thrones wrapped up, the cast couldn't resist sneaking home some souvenirs. Sophie Turner snagged her Sansa corset and a secret scroll. Kit Harington stole a Jon Snow statue for his garden, complete with voice lines. Maisie Williams grabbed Arya's bloody jacket and her Braavosi coin. Isaac Hempstead Wright raided for kitchenware. Hannah Murray swiped waterproof socks, and Christian Nahn took a chunk of Hodor's door. Jacob Anderson got a chess piece, Peloy Aspect slipped away with a ring, and Ian Glenn claimed Ser Jorah's Dothraki rings. Even off-screen, the game never truly ended. Joe Dempsey, who played Gendry in Game of Thrones, wanted his character to have a proper warhammer, just like his father, Robert Baratheon. So he asked the props team for one, and they delivered, literally. The warhammer they gave him weighed around 30 pounds. That's about 14 kilograms. After swinging it for just one take, Joe said he nearly passed out from the effort. Sadly, it didn't really look as good as Robert's warhammer in the books. Sophie Turner and Maisie Williams used to prank the Game of Thrones crew by pretending Sansa and Arya were about to kiss. The two actresses, who grew up playing Stark sisters, became inseparable off-screen. By the later seasons, they decided to spice things up during filming. "We tried to sneak a kiss into every scene we did together," Sophie admitted. Whenever they were filming a tense Stark family moment, they'd suddenly lean in as if Sansa and Arya were about to make out. Directors would shout, "Cut!" in confusion, and the entire crew would burst into laughter. It became a running joke, a playful way to break tension on a show known for its grim tone. Sophie even joked in interviews, "People always think Maisie and I are a couple. I am obsessed with her, so you never know." Sadly, no outtakes have surfaced, but the legend lives on among the cast. Iwan Rheon originally auditioned to play Jon Snow, a role that ultimately went to Kit Harington. "It could have been so different," Rheon joked. Though he didn't land the part, his audition impressed producers enough to later cast him as Ramsay Bolton in Season 3. Looking back, Rhian agrees the right choice was made. It would have been a very different Jon Snow if I'd played him. However, he did do a great job at being Ramsay Bolton. Gwendoline Christie transformed herself physically and mentally to play Brienne of Tarth. Fans had championed her for the role. She lost weight, built muscle, and trained extensively in horse riding, sword fighting, and postural work to become a believable warrior. Christie changed her lifestyle and embraced a more masculine appearance, even cutting her long hair. The physical demands were intense, especially filming her brutal fight with the Hound. A dedicated fan of the books, Christie trained in yoga, kickboxing, and running to embody Brienne's strength, spirit, and complexity. When Isaac Hempstead Wright first read the final Game of Thrones script, he thought it was a prank, only to realize it was real. He told Entertainment Weekly he was shocked at first and even secretly hoped for a dramatic death scene instead. Still, he came to appreciate the ending. "It's bittersweet," he said, echoing George R.R. Martin's intent. He admitted fans would be upset, but believed unpredictability was the best outcome. While many questioned Bran's rise to power, Wright now sees it as a fitting close to the story. Aidan Gillen, who played Littlefinger in Game of Thrones, addressed fans' fascination with his character's shifting accent. He explained that the changes were subtle and intentional, reflecting Littlefinger's journey from humble beginnings to a manipulative court player. The character consistently reinvents himself to deceive others, and Gillian mirrored that in his performance. While he acknowledges the accent evolved over time, he feels it's being somewhat overanalyzed. Still, he appreciates viewers' attention to detail, emphasizing that such scrutiny is part of what makes the show so engaging. At the end of Season 5, Lena Headey portrayed a humiliated Cersei Lannister forced to walk naked through King's Landing in a brutal public shaming. Though the scene was powerful, Headey used a body double for the nudity. She later explained that the decision was personal, rooted in the emotional demands of the scene, her role as a mother, and her need to stay connected to the character's mindset. Some criticized her for not appearing nude, but Headey emphasized that she was present throughout filming and gave the performance her full emotional commitment. Emilia Clarke, who played Daenerys Targaryen, once said she never took anything from the Game of Thrones set due to a fear of getting in trouble. While others took keepsakes, she joked that she only took Daenerys in her heart. Clarke often asked for a wig or coat, but was denied. However, during a radio interview, she revealed that her brother, who worked on the show, secretly gifted her a Targaryen flag from a battle scene for Christmas. She was so moved she burst into tears, and now proudly displays it at home. Before Season 8, Game of Thrones stars like Emilia Clarke and Kit Harington reportedly earned $500,000 per episode. However, they negotiated higher pay mid-Season 7, with top cast members eventually earning up to $1.2 million per episode. Following the Friends cast model, they reportedly banded together to secure the raise. Lena Headey, who played Cersei, earned $3.6 million for just 3 episodes, roughly $144,000 per minute, despite her character spending much of the season gazing out of a window. If these reports are accurate, the Game of Thrones cast became some of the highest paid actors in television history. Ian McShane, Brother Ray, became infamous for dropping Game of Thrones spoilers and made it clear he didn't care. As HBO tightened secrecy, McShane casually spilled major plot points in interviews. On BBC, he revealed his character was a former warrior turned peaceful leader who helped revive a beloved figure everyone thought was dead. He all but confirmed the return of the Hound, saying, "It's not the latter, it might be the former." While HBO tried to stop leaks, they couldn't stop McShane's loose lips. In a British GQ action replay segment, Richard Madden recalled the infamous Red Wedding scene where his character, Robb Stark, meets a brutal end. Madden shared behind-the-scene insights that Will Champion, Coldplay's drummer, had a cameo as the wedding band's drummer. He recounted the emotional toll of filming, revealing he sobbed on a flight home still covered in fake blood. Madden also mentioned that Tom Brooke, who played the man who killed Rob's wife, later co-starred with him in Bodyguard. Madden described the scene as traumatic and pivotal in his career. Davos wonders if his sons were lost only as a lesson for his king. "Why did you mean to kill me?" Melisandre asked. "I will tell you," said Davos, "if you tell me who betrayed me." It could only have been Salladhor Saan, and yet, even now, he prayed it was not so. The Red Woman laughed. "No one betrayed you, Onion Knight. I saw your purpose in my flames. If you can see the future in these flames, how is it that we burnt upon the Blackwater? You gave my sons to the fire. My sons, my ship, my men, all burning." Melisandre shook her head. "You wrong me, Onion Knight. Those were no flames of mine. Had I been with you, your battle would have had a different ending. But his grace was surrounded by unbelievers, and his pride proved stronger than his faith. His punishment was grievous, but he has learned from his mistake. Were my sons no more than a lesson for a king then?" Joe Dempsey, who plays Gendry, disappeared in Season 3, only to finally return in Game of Thrones Season 7. Once rowing into obscurity, he's now forging weapons in Flea Bottom, ironically for the Lannisters who killed his father. He's been hiding, training, and waiting for purpose until Sir Davos finds him and recruits him to fight the White Walkers. Dempsey was thrilled to return after years away, having spent 9 months keeping the secret. Dempsey prefers flying under the radar and relished the chance to rejoin the chaos. Melisandre believes that R'hllor is needed to beat the others. "Do you think I crossed half the world to put another vain king on yet another empty throne? The war has been waged since time began, and before it is done, all men must choose where they will stand. On one side is R'hllor, the Lord of Light, the Heart of Fire, the God of Flame and Shadow. Against him stands the great other, whose name may not be spoken, the Lord of Darkness, the Soul of Ice, the God of Night and Terror. Ours is not a choice between Baratheon and Lannister, between Greyjoy and Stark. It is death we choose, or life, darkness or light. So tell me, Sir Davos Seaworth, and tell me truly, does your heart burn with the shining light of R'hllor, or is it black and cold and full of worms?" "My heart," Davos said slowly, "is full of doubts." Sansa was blindsided to her marriage to Tyrion. "Yes, the gods have been kind to you, Sansa. You are a lovely girl. It seems almost obscene to squander such sweet innocence on that gargoyle." "What gargoyle?" Sansa did not understand. Cersei Lannister ignored the question. "The cloak," she commanded, and the woman brought it out. A long cloak of white velvet heavy with pearls. A fierce direwolf was embroidered upon it in silver thread. Sansa looked at it with sudden dread. "Your father's colors," said Cersei. "You're prettier with your mouth closed, Sansa," Cersei told her. "Come along now, the Septon is waiting, and the wedding guests as well." "No," Sansa blurted. "No." "Yes, you are a ward of the crown. The king stands in your father's place. Since your brother is an attainted traitor, that means he has every right to dispose of your hand. You are to marry my brother Tyrion." Alistair Florent was sent to Davos' cell for being a traitor to Stannis. "Gods be good, how can they call it treason?" Davos stood, frowning. "My lord, what did you do?" "Not treason, never treason. I love his grace as much as any man. My own niece is his queen, and I remain loyal to him when wiser men fled. I am his hand, the hand of the king. I only meant to save our lives, and honor, yes. I penned a letter. Salladhor Saan swore that he had a man who could get it to King's Landing, to Lord Tywin. His lordship is a man of reason, and my terms, the terms were fair, more than fair." "What terms were these, my lord?" "That Lord Stannis give up his claim to the Iron Throne and retract all he said of Joffrey's bastardy, on the condition that he be accepted back into King's Peace and confirmed as Lord of Dragonstone and Storm's End." After Jaime lost his hand, he realizes how Tyrion has felt when people laugh at him. His hand burned, still long after they had snuffed out the torch they'd used to sear his bloody stump. Days after, he could still feel the fire lancing up his arm and his fingers twisting in the flames, the fingers he no longer had. He had taken wounds before, but never like this. He had never known there could be such pain. Sometimes unbidden old prayers bubbled from his lips, prayers he learnt as a child and never thought of since. Prayers he had first prayed with Circe kneeling beside him in the sept at Castle Rock. Sometimes he even wept, until he heard the murmurs laughing. Then he made his eyes go dry and his heart go dead, and prayed for his fever to burn away his tears. Now I know how Tyrion has felt all those times they laughed at him. Arya heard that Catelyn let Jaime go because she loved him. In the corner by the window, Lem and Harwin sat talking to red-haired Tansy in low voices. "Spent the night in Jaime's cell," she heard the woman say. "Her and this other wench, the one who slew Renly, all three of them together, and come the morn, Lady Catelyn cut him loose for love." She gave a throaty chuckle. It's not true, Arya thought. She never would. She felt sad and angry and lonely, all at once. Cersei ordered Sansa to be carried to her wedding if she would not walk. My claim, Sansa thought, sickened. Dantos the Fool was not so foolish after all. He had seen the truth of it. Sansa backed away from the queen. "I won't. I understand your reluctance. Cry if you must. In your place, I would likely rip my hair out. He's a loathsome little imp, no doubt of it. But marry him you shall. You can't make me. Of course we can. You may come along quietly and say your vows as befits a lady, or you may struggle and scream and make a spectacle for the stable boys to titter over, but you will end up wedded and bedded all the same." The queen opened the door. Sir Meryn Trant and Sir Osmond Kettleback were waiting in the white scale armor of the Kingsguard. "Escort Lady Sansa to the sept," she told them. "Carry her if you must, but try not to tear the gown. It was very costly." Davos said he would die with his king over secretly messaging Tywin. "And what did his grace say?" asked Davos. "He is always with the Red Woman, and he is not in his right mind, I fear. My way was better, and Stannis gave me his seal. He gave me leave to rule. The hand speaks with the king's voice. Not in this. It is not in Stannis to yield, so long as he knows his claim is just. No more than he can unsay his words against Joffrey when he believes them true. As for the marriage, Tommen was born of the same incest as Joffrey, and his grace would sooner see Shireen dead than wed to such." A vein throbbed in Florence's forehead. "He has no choice." "You are wrong, my lord. He can choose to die a king. And us with him? Is that what you desire, Onion Knight? No, but I am the king's man, and I will make no peace without his leave." Joffrey threatened to marry Sansa to Ilyn Payne. Joffrey himself was waiting for her on the steps of the castle sept. The king was resplendent in crimson and gold, his crown on his head. "I'm your father today," he announced. "You're not," she flared. "You'll never be." His face darkened. "I am. I'm your father, and I can marry you to whoever I like, to anyone. You'll marry the pig boy if I say so, and bed down with him in the sty." His green eyes glittered with amusement. "Or maybe I should give you to Ilyn Payne. Would you like him better?" Sansa stated that Tyrion wasn't as bad as the rest of the Lannisters when confronted with her new marriage. Sansa tried to run, but Cersei's handmaid caught her before she'd gone a yard. So Meryn Trant gave her a look that made her cringe, but Kettleblack touched her almost gently and said, "Do as you're told, sweetling. It won't be so bad. Wolves are supposed to be brave, aren't they?" Brave. Sansa took a deep breath. "I am a Stark. Yes, I can be brave." They were all looking at her, the way they had looked at her that day in the yard when Sir Boros Blount had torn her clothes off. It had been the imp who saved her from a beating that day, the same man who was waiting for her now. "He is not so bad as the rest of them," she told herself. "I'll go." Cersei smiled. "I knew you would." Christian Narn, who played Hodor on Game of Thrones, revealed he developed a serious back injury from years of carrying Bran, Isaac Hempstead Wright, on set. By season 6, Wright had grown too tall, so a smaller body double was used instead. Later, they also found a stunt double who closely matched Nan's build. Despite the pain, Nan said he wouldn't sue. "The show's done so much for me," he explained on the Inside of You podcast. "Holding the door broke our hearts, but carrying Bran nearly broke his back." Game of Thrones faced its first major production challenge in Season 2, filming the massive Battle of the Blackwater on a limited budget. The team had to scramble when adapting one of the saga's biggest moments. HBO granted an extra $2 million and an extra week of filming, but compromises were still necessary. The battle was filmed mostly at night in the rain at a muddy quarry with many creative tricks, like reusing one boat for every fleet and faking seawater in a car park. Against all odds, they pulled it off. Charles Dance, who played the fearsome Tywin Lannister on A Game of Thrones, didn't know his character would die until a fan spoiled it. A stranger told him he had a great death scene, prompting Dance to grab the book at Waterstones and discover Tywin's fate, shot on the toilet by his son. "Ah, on the Kazi," he said, using British slang for toilet, a fitting end. It's oddly amusing that such a commanding character met his end so undignified, and that Dance found out from a random passerby. The Mountain is a real-life strongman champion. Hafthor Bjornsson, best known as the Mountain on Game of Thrones, has shifted focus back to strongman competitions. He's aiming to defend his World's Strongest Man title after winning it in the Philippines in 2018. Filming Game of Thrones made training difficult. Some shoots lasted 18 hours, and his transformation for the Clegane fight took 7. "You'll have to be obsessed to win," he says. He now trains in his custom gym in Iceland, since most regular gyms lack the equipment needed for World's Strongest Man preparation. The Bells in Game of Thrones ends with Arya Stark alone in the ruins of King's Landing, until a bloodied pale white horse appeared. The horse could symbolize death, heroism, or nothing at all. Given Arya's arc as a bringer of death, it might hint at one final mission. Or maybe it's just a horse. Perhaps the showrunners simply liked the imagery. Either way, that's how we spend our final moments with Arya. A quiet, cryptic scene that might be profound, or just a pretty exit. Sansa didn't know what to say to Tyrion before their wedding. "Please, your grace," she begged. "If you ever loved me, even a little bit, don't make me marry your uncle." Tyrion Lannister stepped through the doors of the Sept. "Your grace," he said to Joffrey, "grant me a moment alone with Lady Sansa, if you would be so kind." The king was about to refuse, but his mother gave him a sharp look. They drew off a few feet. Tyrion wore a doublet of black velvet covered with golden scrollwork, but the gash across his face was raw and red, and his nose was a hideous scab. "You are very beautiful, Sansa," he told her. "It is good of you to say so, my lord." She did not know what else to say. Should I tell him he is handsome? He'll think me a fool or a liar. She lowered her gaze and held her tongue. Jaime would drink literally anything after he lost his hand. His throat was so raw that he could not eat, but he drank wine when they gave it to him and water when that was all they offered. Once they handed him a cup and he quaffed it straight away, trembling, and the brave companions burst into laughter so loud and harsh it hurt his ears. "That's horse piss you're drinking, Kingslayer," Rorge told him. Jaime was so thirsty he drank it anyway, but afterward he retched it all back up. They made Brienne wash the vomit out of his beard, just as they made her clean him up when he soiled himself in the saddle. Anyway, subscribe for more. Tyrion offered to back away from the marriage to Sansa so she could marry Lancel instead. "My lady, this is no way to bring you to your wedding. I am sorry for that, and for making this so sudden and so secret. My lord father felt it necessary, for reasons of state. Else I would have come to you sooner, as I wished." He waddled closer. "You did not ask for this marriage, I know. No more than I did. If I had refused you, however, they would have wed you to my cousin Lancel. Perhaps you would prefer that. He is nearer your age, and fairer to look upon. If that is your wish, say so. I will end this farce. I don't want any Lannister," she wanted to say. "I want Willis." But then she remembered what Dantas had told her in the Godswood. "Tyrell or Lannister, it makes no matter. It's not me they want. only my claim. Jaime took a brave companion's sword, hoping they would kill him. One damp, cold morning, when he was feeling slightly stronger, a madness took hold of him, and he reached for the Dornishman's sword with his left hand and wrenched it clumsily from its scabbard. Let them kill me, he thought, so long as I die fighting, a blade in hand. But it was no good. Shagwell came hopping from leg to leg, dancing nimbly aside when Jaime slashed at him. Unbalanced, he staggered forward, hacking wildly at the fool. But Shagwell spun and ducked and darted until all the murmurs were laughing at Jaime's futile efforts to land a blow. Rourke finally flung him aside and kicked the sword from Jaime's feeble fingers as he tried to bring it up. "That was amusing, Kingslayer," said Vargo Hoat, "but if you try it again, I shall take your other hand, or perhaps a foot." None of the Tyrells were at Sansa's wedding. "You are kind, my lord," she said, defeated. "I am a ward of the throne, and my duty is to marry as the king commands." "I know I am not the sort of husband young girls dream of, Sansa," he said softly, "but neither am I Joffrey." "No," she said. "You were kind to me, I remember." Tyrion offered her a thick, blunt-fingered hand. "Come then, let us do our duty." So she put her hand in his, and he led her up to the marriage altar, where the Sapton waited between the mother and the father to join their lives together. She saw Dantas looking at her with big round eyes. None of the Tyrells are here, she realized suddenly, but there were other witnesses aplenty. Lord Giles was coughing, and Lady Tanda's pregnant daughter was sobbing for no apparent reason. Let her sob, Sansa thought. Perhaps I shall do the same before this day is done. Joffrey took Eddard's place as Sansa's father at her wedding. The ceremony passed as in a dream. Sansa did all that was required of her. There were prayers and vows and singing, and tall candles burning, 100 dancing lights that the tears in her eyes transformed into 1,000. Thankfully, no one seemed to notice that she was crying as she stood there, wrapped in her father's colors. Or, if they did, they pretended not to. In what seemed no time at all, they came to the changing of the cloaks. As father of the realm, Joffrey took the place of Lord Eddard Stark. Sansa stood stiff as a lance as his hands came over her shoulders to fumble with the clasp of her cloak. One of them brushed her and lingered to give it a little squeeze. Then the clasp opened and Joff swept her maiden's cloak away with a kingly flourish and a grin. Sansa refused to kneel at her wedding for Tyrion. No one had thought to bring a stool, however, and Tyrion stood 1.5 feet shorter than his bride. As he moved behind her, Sansa felt a sharp tug on her skirt. He wants me to kneel, she realized, blushing. She was mortified. It was not supposed to be this way. She had dreamed of her wedding 1,000 times, and always she had pictured how her betrothed would stand behind her, tall and strong, sweep the cloak of his protection over her shoulders. She felt another tug at her skirt, more insistent. I won't. Why should I spare his feelings when no one cares about mine? The dwarf tugged at her a 3rd time. Stubbornly, she pressed her lips together and pretended not to notice. They were all laughing by then, Joffrey the loudest. Dantas, down on your hands and knees, the king commanded. My uncle needs a boost to climb his bride. Brienne called Jaime a craven. Jaime, Brienne whispered, so faintly he thought he was dreaming it. Jaime, what are you doing? Dying, he whispered back. No, she said. No, you must live. He wanted to laugh. Stop telling me what to do, wench. I'll die if it pleases me. Are you so craven? The word shocked him. He was Jaime Lannister, a knight of the Kingsguard. He was the Kingslayer. No man had ever called him craven. Other things they called him, yes. Oathbreaker, liar, murderer. They said he was cruel, treacherous, reckless, but never craven. What else can I do but die? Live, she said. Live and fight and take revenge. But she spoke too loudly. Rorge heard her voice and came over to kick her, shouting at her to hold her bloody tongue if she wanted to keep it. Craven, Jaime thought. Can it be? They took my sword hand. Was that all I was? A sword hand. Gods be good. Is it true? Sansa dreamed of everyone watching her dance when she got married. When the musicians began to play, she timidly laid her hand on Tyrion's and said, My lord, should we lead the dance? His mouth twisted. I think we have already given them sufficient amusement for one day, don't you? As you say, my lord. She pulled her hand back. Joffrey and Margaery led in their place. How can a monster dance so beautifully? Sansa wondered. She had often daydreamed of how she would dance at her wedding, with every eye upon her and her handsome lord. In her dreams they had all been smiling. Not even my husband is smiling. Other guests soon joined the king and his betrothed on the floor. Sansa sat with her hands in her lap, watching how the queen moved and laughed and tossed her blonde curls. She charms them all, she thought dully. How I hate her. She looked away. Jaime forced himself to live for family and revenge. The wench had the right of it. He could not die. Cersei was waiting for him. She would have need of him. And Tyrion, his little brother, who loved him for a lie. And his enemies were waiting too. The young wolf who had beaten him in the Whispering Wood and killed his men around him. Edmure Tully, who had kept him in darkness and chains. These brave companions. When morning came, he made himself eat. They fed him a mush of oats, horse food, but he forced down every spoon. He ate again at evenfall, and at the next day. Live, he told himself harshly, when the mush was like to gag him. Live for Cersei. Live for Tyrion. Live for vengeance. A Lannister always pays his debts. His missing hand throbbed and burnt and stank. When I reach King's Landing, I'll have a new hand forged, a golden hand, and one day I'll use it to rip out Vargo Hoat's throat. Kit Harington nearly ended his relationship with Rose Leslie over an April Fool's prank gone wrong. He placed a hyper-realistic severed head, his own, in their fridge. When Rose opened it, she screamed, collapsed, and later told him she'd leave him if he ever pulled something like that again. And that includes marriage. Another year, he faked a news article claiming her favorite almond milk brand was shutting down due to Brexit. Panicked, she called his assistant and bulk ordered £150 worth on his credit card. The joke spectacularly backfired. Game of Thrones went all out for the Loot Train attack, a fiery ambush led by Daenerys and Drogon. Behind the scenes, it was a massive, exhausting production. The team used up to 8 cameras, 3 tracking vehicles, a spider cam, and even a fly cam to capture the chaos. Emilia Clarke filmed over 80 dragon riding shots, compared to just 11 in Season 6. If you thought the Dothraki riding horses and firing arrows was fake, think again. It was real stuntmen doing real stunts. This wasn't just CGI, it was relentless. Sansa felt betrayed by the Tyrells after her wedding. With this kiss, I pledge my love and take you for my lord husband. With this kiss, I pledge my love and take you for my lady and wife. He leaned forward and their lips touched briefly. He is so ugly, Sansa thought, when his face was close to hers. The Septon raised his crystal high, so the rainbow light fell down upon them. Here, in the sight of gods and men, he said, I do solemnly proclaim Tyrion of House Lannister and Sansa of House Stark to be man and wife, one flesh, one heart, one soul, now and forever, and cursed be the one who comes between them. She had to bite her lip to keep from sobbing. The wedding feast was held in the small hall. There were perhaps 50 guests, and here Sansa found the Tyrells. Margaery gave her such a sad look, and when the Queen of Thorns tottered in, she never looked at her at all. Eleanor, Alla, and Mega seemed determined not to know her. My friends, she thought bitterly. Ed Sheeran's surprise cameo as a Lannister soldier in the Game of Thrones Season 7 premiere didn't sit well with fans. Though brief, his appearance, singing a tune and smiling quietly, felt out of place in the show's gritty, immersive world. Many viewers found it distracting to see such a recognizable pop star in a fantasy series that usually prides itself on realism. Showrunners brought Sheeran in as a surprise for Maisie Williams, who's a big fan. It was a sweet gesture behind the scenes, but for many fans, it broke the illusion. Night's Watch was braving the cold in IKEA rugs. Game of Thrones costume designer Michelle Clapton revealed that their iconic fur capes were actually repurposed rugs from the furniture giant. Speaking at the Getty Museum, she explained they were cut, shaved, strapped with leather, and then broken down. the show's term for aging costumes using dye, sandpaper, and more. "We take anything we can," Clapton said, earning applause. So while the Night's Watch fought White Walkers, their wardrobe came straight from a budget home's goods store. Emilia Clarke's wig, who plays Daenerys Targaryen, is the most time-consuming to style on a Game of Thrones. Clarke has nearly black hair. It must be tightly braided, covered with a bold cap, blended with skin tone, and then topped with the white wig, a process that takes up to 2 hours according to hair designer Kevin Alexander. 2 versions are used, a clean styled look and another for messy scenes. Made of real human hair for natural movement, each wig costs about £4,500, making it one of the most expensive wigs on set. Pedro Pascal had a great time filming Oberyn Martell's gruesome death scene in A Game of Thrones. On Hot Ones, he described it as oddly relaxing. "It was the best part of the day," he said, noting the heat on set and how the fake blood pumped through tubing felt cool on his skin. Vjuzhanina, the mountain, was incredibly gentle. Pascal barely felt his weight, as blood and fake flesh covered his face. Pascal actually fell asleep. "I'm a terrible sleeper," he joked, but apparently face meat and blood do the trick. On Game of Thrones, even severed heads get styled. Hair designer Kevin Alexander explains they use wigs from the actor's double and style them depending on how close the camera will get. Battle scenes may require up to 25 hairstylists, especially when helmets come off. To create realistic grunge, the team uses grease products and powdered dirt. All wigs were made from real hair. Sophie Turner's signature red hair is a custom watercolor mix redone every 7 to 10 days to preserve her natural blonde. And yes, 80s Madonna fuels the hair bus. Emilia Clarke recalled her first day filming Game of Thrones, where at 22, she fell off a horse in front of the entire cast and crew while shooting in a rainy bamboo field. Embarrassed, she burst into tears thinking, "This is my first job, please stop filming." Despite the rough start, Clarke said playing Daenerys changed her life, giving her unforgettable, goosebump-inducing moments. "Every season got bigger, better. Dani made me a better actress," reflecting on the joy and growth the role brought over the years. Maester Aemon could have been king. He was a Targaryen prince, born with the right blood, but he gave it all up. He took the black, lived in the cold, served the realm, not through fire or war, but through wisdom. He watched his family burn in the Civil War. He saw madness destroy his bloodline, and yet he never turned bitter. He mentored Jon Snow, advised the Watch, and in his final days, he remembered his brother Aegon and wept. Aemon's story is quiet, but powerful. A prince who rejected power and became a true servant of the realm. Before men built castles, before dragons flew, there were the children of the forest. Small, ancient, magical beings who lived in harmony with nature. They carved faces into trees, wielded mysterious powers, and when the first men came, they fought, then allied. Together, they built the wall, but their most fateful act, creating the Night King. In their desperation to survive, they made a monster. The children vanished from the world, but their legacy shaped everything. Magic, prophecy, the war between light and dark. Without them, there is no Westeros. Learning Dothraki for Clarke was a real challenge. It was hard to pronounce and even harder to memorize. In Season 1, she plastered her apartment with post-it notes just to get it down. Valyrian was easier, she said. It's more melodic and flows better, saying she usually forgets the languages once filming ends, though once she jokingly blurted Dothraki gibberish at another actor to mess with him. As for eating the horse heart, it was solidified jam, but tasted like bleach and raw pasta. She ate about 28 of them, constantly spitting them into a bucket between takes. Robert Baratheon won the crown with a warhammer and fury, but once he had it, he hated it. The throne bored him, the politics disgusted him. He drank, he hunted, he grew soft. But you know what? He was right about a lot of things. He knew the Targaryens weren't gone. He sensed the rot in the Lannisters. He warned Ned that peace doesn't last. Robert's tragedy isn't just that he died, it's that he never wanted to rule. and no one stopped him from doing it anyway. When fans talk about the greatest fights in Game of Thrones, they mention Oberyn vs. the Mountain, but the most underrated duel, Brienne of Tarth vs. Sandor Clegane, the Hound. It wasn't just steel on steel, it was personal. Brienne wanted to protect Arya. The Hound wanted to keep her with him. Both believed they were right. The fight itself was raw, brutal, no music, no flair. Just two warriors battling with everything they had. No one's in the wrong, and that's what makes it so compelling. You feel every swing. Brienne breaks the Hound's leg. He nearly kills her. But in the end, it's not about victory. Arya chooses neither. She walks away. The duel showed us that even the best fighters fight for flawed reasons. And sometimes there is no right side. Just two people doing what they think is right, the only way they know how. Watching House of the Dragon changes how we see Daenerys. It gives context. It shows us the bloodline she comes from, full of fire, passion, and destruction. Rhaenyra and Alicent's war. That's the legacy Daenerys inherits. A divided house, a throne soaked in dragonfire. Suddenly, Daenerys' obsession with breaking the wheel makes more sense. She wasn't just trying to win Westeros. She was trying to cleanse it of her own cursed history. But that history was in her veins too. The more we learn about the Dance of the Dragons, the clearer it becomes. Daenerys wasn't just a liberator. She was a descendant of a long line of rulers who believed they were destined to rule, no matter the cost. The opening credits of Game of Thrones almost looked completely different. Today, they're iconic, thanks to that sweeping theme music and the intricate 3D map that guides us through Westeros. But that evolving title sequence wasn't always the plan. In fact, designer Agnes Wall once revealed that the original idea was much simpler. Instead of a dynamic opening, the show would have used static maps between scenes to show location changes, like cutting from King's Landing to Winterfell with a quick on-screen map. However, that probably would have been a bit jarring and not as good. Game of Thrones knew exactly how to open. No politics, no dragons, just death. The very first scene, rangers beyond the wall, stumbling upon a massacre, then being hunted by the White Walkers, set the tone for everything to come. It wasn't about who sat the Iron Throne. It was about a threat no one believed in, a quiet terror, and it was perfect. While everyone else fought over castles and crowns, this opening reminded us, winter is coming. And when it arrives, none of that matters. No opening scene told us more with fewer words. Just snow, blood, fear, and a mysterious enemy with blue eyes, watching from the dark. The scene didn't just start a show, it started a countdown. Often people think dragons rule Westeros. Try gold. The Iron Bank of Braavos isn't flashy, but it's terrifying. They don't fight battles, they fund them. Kingdoms rise and fall depending on who they support. They back Stannis when he looks strong, then Cersei when she paid off her debts. They never forget a loan. And if you default, they back your enemies. Cold, calculating, and loyal only to coin. Even Tywin Lannister feared them. Even Daenerys had to consider them. The Iron Bank is a reminder that in Westeros, power isn't always fire and steel. Sometimes it's paperwork, and the person with the gold often wins the war. In Game of Thrones, each episode's opening sequence subtly changed depending on what castles or regions were important that episode. While Winterfell, King's Landing, and the Wall appeared in every single episode, even those iconic landmarks didn't stay the same. In seasons 3 and 4, Winterfell was shown in ruins, shrouded in smoke after Theon's failed takeover. By season 5, it bore the flayed man sigil of House Bolton. It wasn't until the end of season 6 that the Stark direwolf returned after Jon Snow and Sansa reclaimed their home. Across the show's run, 22 different locations appeared in the title sequence. Season 6 featured the most, with 11 points of interest displayed in a single episode. And in Season 8, the Wall saw its most dramatic transformation. After the Night King and undead Viserion blasted through Eastwatch, the credits revealed a massive hole marking the army of the Dead's path into Westeros. After Jon Snow's death in Season 5, HBO went to extreme lengths to keep it under wraps. Kit Harington's parents and friends were told he wasn't coming back. Kit wasn't allowed to go outside in public without a hoodie for months. However, the fact that he didn't cut his hair, despite complaining about it all the time and wanting to shave it off, was a huge giveaway that he was coming back. Jason Momoa didn't just make up all the Dothraki, he had to memorize it phonetically. A professional linguist created the Dothraki language from scratch, and Momoa learnt it like a song, focusing on the rhythm and sounds rather than actual meanings. But during filming, he couldn't stop laughing. He said speaking Dothraki made him feel like an angry pirate reading poetry, and not exactly the fearsome warlord vibe he was going for. The whites in Game of Thrones weren't all CGI. In fact, many were real actors wearing full prosthetics, hours of makeups, rotting skin and all. But under those heavy costumes, especially during intense battle scenes, things got dangerously hot. To prevent heat exhaustion, the actors wore cooling suits underneath. These high-tech suits pumped cold water through a network of tubes, helping regulate their body temperature. So while the undead looked terrifying on screen, they were literally being kept alive and moving by science. English actor Joe Dempsey didn't land his iconic role as Gendry Baratheon on his first try. In fact, he had to go through 3 unsuccessful auditions before being cast. Dempsey first auditioned for the lead role of Jon Snow in the pilot and said, "I auditioned for the pilot. I had no idea what Game of Thrones was," he said. "Didn't get it, kinda forgot about it. Nobody knew it was going to become the biggest TV show on the planet at that point." About 18 months later, he tried out for 2 smaller roles as Jon Snow's Night Watch buddies, but didn't get them either. Finally, he auditioned for Gendry. It took 3 separate callbacks in London and Belfast, meeting showrunners David and Dan twice before he was cast. Despite thinking his final Gendry audition was the worst I've ever given, he got the part, and became a fan favorite throughout seasons 1 to 3 and again in 7 to 8. In early concept drafts of Game of Thrones, Varys was originally going to have a very literal connection to his nickname, the Spider. The plan was for him to keep a real spider in a glass cage, quietly observing it in his chambers. It was meant to be a visual metaphor for his network of spies, his little birds. But the idea was eventually scrapped for being a little too on the nose. The showrunners decided that Varys' cold composure and whispered influence were more powerful without the obvious symbolism. Jon wasn't sure if he belonged with the wildlings or the Watch anymore. And where do I stand? Jon did not know. To stay with Ygritte, he would need to become a wildling, heart and soul. If he abandoned her to return to his duty, then Magna might cut her heart out. And if he took her with him, assuming she would go, well, he could scarcely bring her back to Castle Black. A deserter and a wildling could expect no welcome anywhere in the 7 Kingdoms. We could go look for Gendil's children, I suppose, though they'd be more like to eat us than to take us in. A lot of Samwell Tarly scenes at the Citadel were filled with completely made-up medical jargon. Actor John Bradley once admitted that some of the lines were so ridiculous he just started making up his own. During one take, he improvised words like pusculus and scalplium, trying to sound like a medieval doctor who knew what he was doing. He flubbed the entire scene, but the director thought it was hilarious and left it in as a joke. Jaime let Qyburn cut infected flesh from his arm without any painkillers. The safest course would be to take the arm off. Then you'll die, Jaime promised. Clean the stump and sew it up. You will want milk of the puppy. No. There will be pain. I'll scream. A great deal of pain. I'll scream very loudly. With a bowl and a sharp blade, Qyburn cleaned the stump while Jaime gulged down strong wine. Nothing helped. Jaime did scream then and pounded the table with his good fist. He screamed again when Qyburn poured boiling wine over what remained. Despite all his vows and fears, he lost consciousness. No man who serves with Vargo Hoat is a stranger to stumps, said Qyburn. Jon remembered something Ned Stark once told him about the walls. Jon found himself hoping a patrol would chance by and put an end to this. No wall can keep you safe, his father had told him once. As they walked the walls of Winterfell, a wall is only as strong as the men who defend it. The wildlings might have 120 men, but 4 defenders would be enough to see them off, with a few well-placed arrows and perhaps a pail of stones. Sigrid cried at the top of the wall, not from fear, but from failure. "I almost fell," she said, with tears in her eyes. "Twice, thrice, the wall was trying to shake me off. The worst is behind us." John tried to sound confident. Sigrid slammed her hand into his chest. "I wasn't frightened. You know nothing, Jon Snow." "Why are you crying then?" "Not for fear." She kicked savagely at the ice beneath her with a heel. "I'm crying because we never found the Horn of Winter. We opened 500 graves and let all those shades loose in the world, and never found the Horn of Jarmen to bring this cold thing down." Jaime shouted sapphires to save Brienne from being Ard. "Wench," he whispered, "let them have the meat, and you go far away." "They'll get no pleasure from what I'll give them," she whispered back. "Let them do it and go away inside." That was what he'd done when Lord Rickard Stark died screaming in his armor. Think of Renly, think of Tarth, Waterfalls, Sapphire Isle, but Rorge won the argument. "One scream out of you and I'll pop one eye and make you eat it." Jaime chuckled. "There's a funny fool. I have a riddle for you, Shagwell. Why do you care if she screams? Oh wait, I know." He shouted, "Sapphires!" as loudly as he could. Rorge kicked at his stump. Jaime howled. When he woke, Hote was screaming, "She'th worth a bag of sapphires!" From then on, guards were posted nightly to protect them. Jaime was paraded into Harrenhal with a rotting stump and no dignity. Jaime's rage kept him walking. The linen that covered the stump was grey and stinking with pus. His phantom fingers screamed with every step. "I am stronger than they know," he told himself. "I am a Lannister. I am still a Knight of the Kingsguard. He would reach Harrenhal. He would live. And I will repay this debt with interest." As they approached the walls, Brienne warned him, "The Boltons are bannermen to the Starks." "The Boltons skin their enemies," Jaime replied. "I cannot die while Cersei lives," he told himself. "We will die together, as we were born together." Tyrion believed the small folk wanted to kill him. Nothing remained beyond the King's Gate but mud and ashes and bits of burnt bone. Yet already there were people living in the shadow of the city walls. Tyrion felt their eyes on him as he rode past, chilly eyes, angry and unsympathetic. No one dared speak, not with Bronn beside him. "If I were alone," he thought, "they would pull me down and smash my face in with a cobblestone, as they did for Preston Greenfield. They come back quicker than the rats," he muttered. "Give me a few dozen gold cloaks and I'll kill them all," said Bronn. "No, but others come in their places. Leave them be. But if they start throwing up hobbles, pull them down." Tyrion had a singer killed just to protect a secret. "That's not a song I'd care to hear again." Simon smiled. "Others might like my tune better. The Queen, perhaps, or your Lord Father." Tyrion warned him. A wise man could earn more from silence than from song. "I shall sing the night of King Joffrey's wedding," Simon said smugly. "That won't be necessary," said Tyrion. "Bronn will call on you soon." Back outside, Tyrion told Bronn, "Give him 3 days, then tell him Hamish the Harper broke his arm." "He'll come quick enough," said Bronn. "His tongue is silver," Tyrion added. "The rest should never be found." Bronn grinned. "There's a pot shop I know in Flea Bottom. All kinds of meat in it, I hear. Make sure I never eat there." When Daenerys flew her dragons in Game of Thrones, she was sitting on a mechanical rig in a green screen studio. The production team built special molten rigs to stimulate dragon flight, and over time, they even gave them nicknames. Amelia had a personal favorite she affectionately called Bumpy. Unlike the others, Bumpy moved more dramatically, jolting and shaking to match the chaos of battle scenes. She specifically chose Jumpy for high-intensity moments, like when Drogon dove into combat or dodged incoming arrows. Tyrion both loved and hated being married to Sansa Stark. Sansa's misery was deepening every day. Tyrion longed to comfort her, but no words would make him fair in her eyes. And their nights together were worse. He no longer slept naked. Her revulsion was too much. "I want her," he realized. "I want Winterfell, yes, but I want her too. I want to comfort her. I want to hear her laugh. I want her to come to me willingly." He smiled bitterly. Yes, I want to be as tall as Jaime and as strong as the mountain too. Jaime once knelt for his white cloak at Harrenhal, and now returns in chains. Why did you laugh? Brienne asked. Harrenhal was where they gave me the white cloak, he whispered. Whence great tourney. I was only 15, but no one could have beaten me that day. Ares never let me joust. He sent me away. He laughed again. But now I'm coming back. They heard the laugh. That night, it was Jaime who got the kicks and punches. He hardly felt them until Rod slammed a boot into his stump. Then he fainted. The Lannisters planned Joffrey's wedding to be one of the most extravagant events in Westeros, even while the city was in ruins. Lord Tywin dismissed Robert's old hunting knife with a wave. What did you find at the riverfront? Mud, said Tyrion, and a few dead things no one's bothered to bury. 3/4 of the quays need repair. The entire fish market is gone. I shudder to think of the cost. You will find whatever gold is required. Will I? Where? The treasury is empty. We're not done paying the alchemists for wildfire or the smiths for my chain. And Cersei's pledged the crown to pay half the cost of Joff's wedding. 77 bloody courses, 1,000 guests, a pie full of doves, singers, jugglers. Tywin was unmoved. We must demonstrate the power and wealth of Castle Rock. I will have the wedding and the waterfront. Shae found out about Tyrion's marriage before Sansa did. There is something you must hear, Tyrion told her. On the morrow, I am to be wed to Sansa Stark. I know. How could you know? Some page was telling Sir Talad about it. He heard from a serving girl who heard Sir Keban talking to your father. She wriggled out of her dress, naked underneath. I don't care. She's only a little girl. You'll give her a big belly and come back to me. Some part of him had hoped for less indifference. Shae is all the love you're ever like to have, he thought bitterly. Jaime insulted Roose Bolton the moment they met. Can this be the Lord of the Dreadfort? When last I heard, my father had sent you scampering off with your tail between your legs. When did you stop running, my lord? Bolton's silence was 100 times more threatening than Vargo Hoat's slobbering. Pale as morning mist, his eyes concealed more than they told. You have lost a hand, he said at last. No, Jaime said. I have it here, hanging around my neck. Roose Bolton reached down, snapped the cord, and flung the hand at Hoat. Take this away. The sight of it offends me. Julian Glover, who played Grand Maester Pycelle on Game of Thrones, was in Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back as General Maximilian Veers. It's hard to say which of these two characters is more evil. Also, Keisha Castle Hughes, who played Oberyn Sand on Game of Thrones, and was Queen Apollinia, the newly elected ruler of Naboo after Padme, who we see in Revenge of the Sith. Gwendolyn Christie, who played Brienne of Tarth, was Captain Phasma in The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, but she was not the only Game of Thrones cast member in Star Wars. Max van Sydow played the three-eyed raven who passed his mantle to Bran on Game of Thrones and played Lor San Tekka in The Force Awakens. Jessica Henwick, who played Namira Sand, was a rebel fighter pilot in The Force Awakens. Hannah John Kamen, who played Ornella, a member of the Dorsh Kharleen in Season 6, was First Order officer in The Force Awakens. Tywin Lannister plotted to use the Night's Watch as political pawns, installing Janos Slynt as their commander. Tyrion protested. Lord Janos is a hollow suit of armor who will sell himself to the highest bidder. Tywin didn't flinch. I count that as a point in his favor. Who was like to bid higher than us? Turning to Pycelle, he dictated the message. Write that King Joffrey was deeply saddened to hear of Lord Commander Mormont's death, but regrets that he can spare no men just now, while so many rebels and usurpers remain in the field. Suggest that matters might be quite different once the throne is secure, provided the king has full confidence in the leadership of the Watch. In closing, ask Marsh to pass along his grace's fondest regards to his faithful friend and servant, Lord Janos Slynt. Pycelle bowed. I shall write as the hand commands, with great pleasure. Mark Stanley, who played Gren, was one of the Knights of Ren. Kate Dickie, who played Lysa Arryn, appeared in The Last Jedi as a monitor for the First Order. Ralph Ineson, who played Dagmar Cleftjaw, a raider of House Greyjoy, and was cast as Colonel Garmouth in The Last Jedi. Ian McKinney, who played Barristan Selmy, made a cameo appearance in Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, as General Jan Dodonna. Francis Maggie, who played Yoren, was in Rogue One as a rebel called Jay Mefran. House Lannister once had no Valyrian steel sword, despite being the richest family in Westeros. Tywin Lannister changed that on the eve of Joffrey's wedding. As Tyrion entered his father's solar, he overheard, "Cherry wood for the scabbards, bound in red leather and ornamented with a row of lion's head studs in pure gold, perhaps with garnets for the eyes." "Rubies," Lord Tywin said. "Garnets lack the fire." Tywin revealed a longsword shimmering black and red, a wedding gift for Joffrey. A king should bear a kingly weapon. It was Valyrian steel, rare and priceless, folded thousands of times with ripples of night and blood. There wasn't just one sword. The armorer unfolded the cloth to reveal a second, heavier, longer, and meant for Jaime. Tyrion joked, "So, a sword for Joff, a sword for Jaime, and not even a dagger for the dwarf." Even in the midst of plotting Cersei's next marriage, Tywin Lannister was interrupted by urgent news from the Wall. Tywin had just declared, "Your sister will be wed. The question is, to whom?" "I have several thoughts," when a knock came at the door. A guardsman announced Grand Maester Pycelle, who shuffled in on a cane. The once magnificent beard that Tyrion had shaved off was growing back in ragged tufts, exposing unslightly pink wattles beneath his neck. Pycelle bowed. "My lord, hand. There has been another bird from Castle Black. Perhaps we could consult privily." Tywin dismissed the notion. "There's no need for that. Tyrion may stay." Tyrion couldn't resist mocking the formality in his head. "Ooh, may I?" He rubbed his nose and waited, eager to hear what trouble from the north might concern the Lannisters now. Samwell Tarly wondered if the cold brought the whites, or if the whites brought the cold. Huddled by the fire, Sam asked Gren softly, "Do you think the whites are gone? Why don't they come, finish us?" "They only come when it's cold," Gren replied, swinging his axe into the woodpile. "Yes," Sam said, "but is it the cold that brings the white, or the whites that bring the cold?" "Who cares?" Gren muttered. "They come together, that's what matters." "Hey, now that we know dragonglass kills them, maybe they won't come at all. Maybe they're frightened of us now." Sam wished he could believe that. But when you were dead, fear meant nothing. Pain, love, duty, none of it mattered to the whites. They would keep coming. Tywin Lannister wanted Janos Slynt to become Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. Pycelle produced the letter with trembling hands. "Here is his letter, my lord. A plea to all 5 kings. He wants men, as many men as we can send him." Tywin scoffed. 5 kings. There is 1 king in Westeros. Those fools in black might try and remember that if they wish his grace to heed them. When you reply, tell him that Renly is dead and the others are traitors and pretenders." Pycelle nodded. "What shall I tell Marsh concerning the men he begs for?" Tywin dismissed the idea of sending help, but saw opportunity. If Mormont is indeed dead, the Black Brothers must choose a new Lord Commander. Pycelle gave Tyrion a sly glance. "An excellent thought, my lord. I know the very man, Janos Slynt." Tyrion bristled. "The Black Brothers choose their own commander," he reminded them. Peter Dinklage has gone from Tyrion Lannister to The Hunger Games and beyond. In late 2023, he stole scenes as Casca Highbottom, the bitter dean of the Academy in The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. But that's just one chapter of his post-Thrones career. Dinklage has embraced some wild genre projects, including playing a janitor turned monster in the campy remake of The Toxic Avenger. The film made waves at festivals, though fans are still waiting on a wide release date. In 2024, he led the gritty Western The Thicket, portraying a bounty hunter navigating lawless 19th century Texas. He's also lent his unmistakable voice to villains like Scourge in Transformers: Rise of the Beasts, and is set to star alongside Dave Franco in the edgy road trip comedy The Shitheads. Now in his mid-50s, Dinklage proves he's more than just Tyrion. He's one of Hollywood's most versatile stars. Emilia Clarke went from ruling dragons to joining the Marvel Universe. After Game of Thrones, she starred in the Disney Plus series Secret Invasion in 2023, making her big leap into superhero territory. But Clarke isn't stopping there. She's lined up an impressive slate of upcoming projects including McCarthy, a historical drama, and An Ideal Wife, where she portrays Constance Lloyd, Oscar Wilde's long-suffering wife. By 2024, Clarke had also landed the lead in Amazon's crime thriller Criminal, playing a daring mastermind behind a high-stakes heist. And while she's hinted at wanting to direct someday, she admits there's still a lot more acting left before she steps behind the camera. Now 38, Clarke balances blockbuster roles, indie films, and charity work, proving she's far from done refining her career in 2025. Samwell Tarly hated being called Slayer, even though he really did kill an other. When Sam's boots sank into the mud, Gren called out, "The others get your boots, Slayer." "Please don't call me that," Sam muttered. Gren frowned. "Why not? It's a good name, and you came by it fairly." Sam sighed. "It's just another way of calling me a coward. They're mocking me, like they call Bedwick Giant." Gren didn't understand. "But you did slay the other. It's not the same." Sam protested. "I was scared. No more than me," Gren admitted. "Sometimes I think everyone is just pretending to be brave, and none of us really are. Maybe pretending is how you get brave. I don't know. Let them call you Slayer. Who cares?" In that frozen camp, courage was rare, and sometimes faked. Sophie Turner's biggest TV role since Sansa Stark turned her into an 80s jewel thief. In 2024, she headlined ITV's Joan, a stylish crime drama based on real-life criminal Joan Harrington. Turner plays a young mother who transforms into a master thief, pulling off daring heists and living the high life in a world of glitz and danger. Critics praise Joan as a bold comeback for Turner, showcasing her range from gritty emotional depth to glamorous disguises. It follows her other post-Thrones work, including HBO's The Staircase and the Netflix dark comedy Do Revenge. Off-screen, Turner has balanced her career with motherhood. She has 2 children and navigated a very public split from Joe Jonas in 2023, relocating back to the UK afterward. With Joan earning buzz and Turner seeking more complex roles, the former Queen in the North is entering an intriguing new chapter. The final season of Game of Thrones sparked one of the biggest fan backlashes in TV history. When Season 8 aired in 2019, millions of viewers were stunned by what they saw as rushed storytelling and inconsistent character arcs. Critics and fans alike pointed to jarring plot points, weird narratives, and a finale that many felt betrayed years of build-up. The outrage was so widespread that a Change.org petition demanding HBO remake Season 8 with competent writers went viral, surpassing 1 million signatures in just days. Even some cast members admitted disappointment, while showrunners David Benioff and D.B. Weiss faced intense criticism for condensing the final story into only 6 episodes. HBO eventually responded, acknowledging the backlash but firmly declining to redo the season. The uproar turned Season 8 backlash into a pop culture shorthand for fan revolt. One of the most shocking twists in Game of Thrones came in the penultimate episode, The Bells. After 7 seasons as a liberator, Daenerys Targaryen suddenly turned her dragon on King's Landing, massacring civilians and becoming the show's final villain. Fans were stunned. Social media erupted with outrage, calling the turn too abrupt, and claiming 10 years of careful character building had been ruined in 1 season. While some pointed out earlier foreshadowing of her ruthlessness, many felt the execution betrayed the Daenerys they'd rooted for. Even Emilia Clarke, who played Daenerys, admitted she was surprised by the dark twist. The choice ignited countless think pieces and remains one of the finale's most divisive moments. A turning point that split the fandom and reshaped how many people view the series' ending. The King of Westeros walked away from acting to study neuroscience. Isaac Hempstein Wright, who played Bran Stark on Game of Thrones, has traded red carpets for labs and lecture halls. Now 26, Wright earned his degree in neuroscience after the show ended and is currently pursuing clinical training in London, openly saying he's done with acting for now. His family kept him grounded during Thrones' intense fame, ensuring he stayed in school even while filming. Wright's passion for science even showed during the show's run. He once interviewed astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson as a special Thrones perk. These days, he occasionally appears at fan conventions, happily reflecting on his time as Bran, but cautioning younger actors about the pressure of growing up in the spotlight. While Westeros crowned him king, Wright's next chapter is firmly rooted in real-world ambitions, far from Hollywood. One of Game of Thrones' most hyped battles became infamous because fans couldn't see it. Season 8's The Long Night, the epic showdown at Winterfell, promised an 82-minute spectacle against the White Walkers. But when it aired, millions of viewers complained the episode was so dimly lit, it was literally too dark to see. Social media exploded with memes and complaints as people cranked up their TVs trying to make out what was happening on screen. Cinematographer Fabian Wagner defended the choice, saying the real problem was viewers' television settings, insisting everything we wanted people to see is there. That explanation only fueled the outrage. Critics argued that a 15 million episode shouldn't require special calibration to enjoy. The controversy became legendary, with fans joking that Melisandre's flames weren't for the battle, but so audiences could finally see the action. Lena Headey swapped Cersei's crown for political scandal and outer space. After Game of Thrones, she co-starred in HBO's 2023 drama White House Plumbers, playing Dorothy Hunt opposite Woody Harrelson and Justin Theroux in a sharp retelling of the Watergate affair. From there, Headey jumped into sci-fi with Beacon 23, starring as Aster, a woman stranded in a remote space lighthouse. The suspenseful series ran for 2 seasons through 2024 before its surprise cancellation by MGM+. But Headey didn't slow down. She's now filming the action thriller Normal with Bob Odenkirk, directed by Ben Wheatley. In it, she plays a sardonic small-town bartender opposite Odenkirk's unlikely sheriff, promising a tense and darkly humorous showdown. At 51, Headey also stepped into producing and directing, proving her post-Thrones career is as unpredictable as her iconic Cersei. Game of Thrones faced years of backlash for how it depicted women. From the start, critics accused the show of relying on sexual violence, a trend so common it earned the nickname sexposition. Scenes like Littlefinger's brothel monologues, where heavy dialogue unfolded against naked extras, sparked debate about whether the show was cleverly portraying decadence or simply objectifying women. Later seasons only intensified the criticism, especially after Sansa Stark's wedding night assault, which many fans called extraneous and exploitative. The creators defended the choices as reflecting Westeros' brutal realism, but growing criticism eventually pushed the show to tone down explicit content. Even Emilia Clarke later declined scenes, citing discomfort with how they were handled. Today, Thrones' legacy is complicated, praised for powerful female characters like Arya and Daenerys, yet remembered for controversies over how far it went in portraying sexual violence. One of Game of Thrones' earliest major controversies wasn't about dragons. It was about a shocking scene between Jaime and Cersei Lannister. In Season 4's Breaker of Chains, Jaime forces himself on his twin sister beside their dead son's body in the Great Sept. The moment enraged viewers because in George R.R. Martin's book, the encounter is consensual, making the show's change feel gratuitous. Critics slammed the scene as an unnecessary addition of sexual violence. Director Alex Graves worsened backlash by saying it becomes consensual by the end, a comment widely labeled tone deaf. Even actor Nikolaj Coster gave an uncertain response, admitting it was yes and no, muddying the waters further. Years later, this remains one of Thrones' most infamous missteps, a low point in the show's portrayal of sexual violence that shocked and angered fans. In 2017, an old 2011 panel clip went viral where Momoa joked about loving fantasy roles because you could rip someone's tongue out and beautiful women without consequence. The remark, made years earlier when he played Khal Drogo, suddenly drew outrage amid heightened awareness around sexual assault. Fans and critics slammed it as tasteless, a stark contrast to Momoa's normally lovable public image. Momoa quickly issued a heartfelt Instagram apology, calling the comment truly tasteless and admitting he was severely disappointed in himself. He acknowledged that sexual harassment can reach anyone and expressed regret for ever making light of it. Warner Bros., then working with Momoa on Aquaman, stood by him, and most fans accepted his apology. Still, the moment remains a cautionary reminder of how quickly old comments can resurface, and how Thrones itself fueled wider conversations about sexual violence. One of Game of Thrones' most upsetting controversies centered on Sansa Stark's wedding night. In Season 5's Unbowed, Unbent, Unbroken, Sansa marries Ramsay Bolton, a storyline that never happens in the books. The episode ends with Ramsay assaulting her off-screen, the camera lingering on Sansa's anguished face and Theon's horrified reaction. The scene triggered immediate outrage. Critics accused the show of using R as a cheap plot device, and fans flooded social media with anger. Even US Senator Claire McGill tweeted she was done with the series after what she called a disgusting and unacceptable depiction. HBO and the episode's writer defended the choice as character development, but the backlash forced a wider conversation about the show's frequent use and whether it had crossed a line. For many viewers, this marked a turning point in how they saw the series. Many fans believe Game of Thrones was rushed so its showrunners could jump to Star Wars. In 2018, David Benioff and D.B. Weiss signed a massive deal with Lucasfilm to create a new Star Wars trilogy, right as Thrones was heading to its final season. When Season 8 disappointed, angry viewers connected the dots. Had the duo checked out of Westeros to chase a galaxy far, far away? Memes and rants flooded Reddit, accusing them of hurrying the ending to move on. The irony? By late 2019, Benioff and Weiss quit the Star Wars project entirely, citing an overloaded schedule. They'd also inked a mega deal with Netflix. To fans, this twist only fueled the perception they'd abandoned Thrones for nothing. Within a year, the once celebrated showrunners went from Hollywood darlings to fandom villains. A cautionary tale about overcommitment and broken trust. One of Game of Thrones' darkest moments wasn't the Red Wedding. It was Stannis burning his own daughter alive. In Season 5's The Dance of Dragons, desperate for victory, Stannis Baratheon sacrifices young Princess Shireen to the Lord of Light. The harrowing scene, which hasn't happened in George R.R. Martin's books, horrified viewers. Social media erupted in outrage with #StannisMustDie, trending as fans called the moment unforgivable, and accused the writers of gratuitous child cruelty. Some even vowed to quit the show entirely. Showrunner Dan Weiss defended the choice, saying it explores how far religious fanaticism could push a man like Stannis, and that it was supposed to be awful to watch. It succeeded. Even die-hard fans who endured the Red Wedding struggled with Shireen's fate. Years later, Shireen remains shorthand for Thrones at its bleakest, a scene many still can't forgive. Game of Thrones once sparked political controversy over a severed head. In Season 1's finale, Joffrey forces Sansa to look at her father's decapitated head on the Red Keep's battlements. But eagle-eyed fans later spotted something shocking. One of the other heads resembled former US President George W. Bush. The likeness went unnoticed when the episode first aired, but a DVD commentary revealed it, igniting a media firestorm. Showrunners David Benioff and D.B. Weiss insisted there was no political statement. The head was simply a reused prop. But the explanation did little to calm outrage. HBO quickly apologized, calling the incident unacceptable and insensitive, and even digitally altered the head in later releases. Still, the bizarre Easter egg remains infamous, a reminder of Thrones' cultural reach, and how even backlash props could spark headlines. HBO originally wanted Game of Thrones to run 10 seasons, but the showrunners cut it short at 8. Even more shocking, the final 2 weren't full length. Season 7 had just 7 episodes, and Season 8 only 6. Fans believe this truncation hurt the storytelling, forcing complex arcs, like the defeat of the White Walkers and Daenerys' descent, into a rush sprint. The infamous Remark petition even cited the extreme pacing as a reason Season 8 felt so unsatisfying. Conleth Hill, who played Varys, admitted the last season felt a bit rushed, and left him inconsolable about his character's ending. Even George R.R. Martin hinted he'd have preferred more seasons to tell the story properly. HBO later revealed they were willing to fund extra episodes, but showrunners Benioff and Weiss declined, reportedly to move on to new projects. That decision remains one of Thrones' most hotly debated creative calls. One of Game of Thrones' most heartbreaking deaths also sparked a major conversation about diversity. In Season 8, Episode 4, Missandei, Daenerys' closest advisor and the only prominent woman of color on the show, is captured and executed by Cersei on the walls of King's Landing. The scene was meant to push Daenerys and Grey Worm toward vengeance, but fans immediately criticized it. Many argued Missandei was frigid, killed solely to motivate other characters, and noted how her brutal death in chains highlighted the show's long-running lack of representation. Commentators called it emblematic of Thrones' racial blind spot, since most characters of color were minor or met grim ends. Actress Nathalie Emmanuel acknowledged the heartbreak, but appreciated the wider conversation it inspired. Missandei's death remains one of the finale's most diverse moments, and likely influenced the more diverse casting in later spin-offs like House of the Dragon. The Game of Thrones showrunners practically vanished after the finale aired. When Season 8 sparked massive outrage, David Benioff and D.B. Weiss skipped San Diego Comic-Con 2019, where they were scheduled to face fan questions about the ending. HBO blamed schedule conflicts, but few bought it. Most assumed they didn't want to face a hall full of angry fans. The pair also avoided post-finale interviews and stayed quiet on social media, with their silence becoming its own controversy. Some fans labeled it cowardice, feeling abandoned by the very creators who brought them Westeros. Months later, Benioff and Weiss resurfaced at the Austin Film Festival and reignited outrage by admitting they didn't really know what they were doing when the show began. The comments seemed to confirm fears that the series had outgrown their grasp by the end, cementing the rift between them and the fandom. One of Game of Thrones' biggest Season 8 debates wasn't about dragons or battles, it was about a wolf. In Episode 4, Jon Snow leaves Ghost behind with Torment before heading south, without even petting him goodbye. The silent farewell enraged fans. After 8 seasons of loyalty, Ghost whimpers as Jon barely glances at him, sparking memes declaring Ghost deserves better, and comparing Jon to the worst pet owners in TV history. Director David Nutter later revealed the reason: CGI. He admitted it was best to keep it simple because direwolves were fully digital creations. But that explanation, especially in a show that spent millions animating dragons, only fueled the backlash. Fans coined the term Dire Wolfgate, and HBO eventually gave Ghost a proper reunion hug in the finale. Still, the moment remains infamous, proof that even a missing pat on the head can spark uproar in Westeros. Lord Commander Mormont revealed the wall's true purpose, and it wasn't wildlings. "I've been thinking about this dragon glass of yours," Mormont growled. "It's not mine," Sam stammered. "Jon Snow's then. If dragon glass daggers are what we need, why do we have only 2 of them? Every man on the wall should be armed with one the day he says his words." Sam murmured, "We never knew." "We never knew," Mormont thundered. "But we must have known once. You don't build a wall 700 feet high to keep savages in skins from stealing women. The wall was made to guard the realm of men, and not against other men. Too many years, Tali. We've lost sight of the true enemy, and now he's here, and we don't know how to fight him." One of Game of Thrones' biggest complaints wasn't just how it ended, but what it didn't explain. Over 8 seasons, the show teased countless prophecies and mysteries. The prince that was promised, the Valancourt prophecy about Cersei, the White Walker's strange spiral symbols, and even Varys' mysterious voice in the flames. But by the finale, many of these threads were left dangling or resolved off-screen. The much-hyped Azor Ahai prophecy, the savior destined to defeat darkness, was never mentioned again, leaving fans unsure if Jon, Arya, or no one fulfilled it. Bran becoming king raised even more questions about the Three-Eyed Raven's role. Forums filled with unanswered questions lists, with one viral post complaining the unresolved plot lines to the infamous Starbucks cup. a symbol of overlooked details. For many, these drop storylines turned Thrones' conclusion into a major missed opportunity. One of Game of Thrones' most shocking deviations from the books was the sudden death of Sir Barristan Selmy. In Season 5, Daenerys' legendary Kingsguard is abruptly killed in an alley fight with the Sons of the Harpy, a moment that stunned both book readers and show-only fans. In George R.R. Martin's novels, Barristan is still alive and playing a pivotal role in Meereen, so his early death felt like a sharp departure. Even actor Ian McKinney admitted he was miffed, revealing he hadn't been warned and assumed he'd survive into the next season. The writers said the change was to raise the stakes, but many fans mourned the loss of one of the few remaining noble older heroes of the show. Barristan's sudden exit added to the perception that Thrones was streamlining and sometimes rushing major storylines. One of Game of Thrones' funniest fan memes came from one of its saddest deaths. In Season 6's Battle of the Bastards, Ramsay Bolton frees young Rickon Stark and has him run across the battlefield, only to shoot arrows at him for sport. Tragically, Rickon runs straight ahead and gets killed. Fans everywhere shouted at their screens, "Zigzag!" Social media erupted with memes, jokes, and frustration that the last male Stark didn't even think to dodge. Even actor Art Parkinson joined the fun, tweeting, "#shoulda zigzagged" after the episode aired. The moment was intended to shock, but instead it sparked endless debate about Thrones logic. Was Rickon panicked, or was it just lazy writing? Either way, Rickon's zigzag became a fandom in-joke and shorthand for Thrones' sometimes questionable battle tactics. It's proof that even the smallest details could ignite passionate discussion in Westeros. Game of Thrones showrunners once pranked Kit Harington with a fake script, convincing him Jon Snow would have a permanent creepy grin. During Season 3, David Benioff and D.B. Weiss circulated a bogus script page describing Jon surviving a fiery battle, but with his lips melted off. The twist? He'd wear a prosthetic appliance for the rest of the series to simulate a grotesque smile. Kit, ever professional, didn't protest, though he admitted it's going to look weird. The makeup team even played along, claiming the prosthetic would take 4 hours to apply daily. Harington reluctantly agreed and showed up ready to film, only for the crew to burst into laughter and reveal the gag. Luckily, Jon Snow never became the Joker of Westeros, but the prank remains one of the funniest behind-the-scenes stories from the set. Maisie Williams trained herself to fight left-handed for Game of Thrones, even though she's naturally right-handed. In George R.R. Martin's books, Arya Stark is a lefty, and Maisie learnt this detail early on when her mum read the novels. Determined to match her character, she began practicing every sword move with her non-dominant hand at just 12 years old. She even did garden drills at home to build up her left-hand coordination, a level of dedication that impressed the producers and added subtle authenticity to Arya's combat style. On set, certain camera angles occasionally forced her to switch hands, something hardcore fans sometimes noticed. But whenever possible, Maisie fought left-handed, keeping Arya true to the source material. By the final season, her years of training paid off. Arya's iconic knife flip against the Night King, pure left-handed mastery. Kit Harington almost derailed Game of Thrones Season 3 because of a clumsy accident. In 2012, between filming seasons, Kit fell while trying to climb into his London flat and shattered his ankle. The timing was disastrous. Production for Jon Snow's big Beyond the Wall storyline was about to begin. The crew scrambled to adjust the schedule, delaying key Iceland scenes until Kit could heal. For wide shots, they even used a stand-in, something Harington admitted gave him ownership issues, joking he couldn't help telling the double how Jon Snow should walk. Producers cleverly hid the injury on screen, and by the time filming moved to Iceland, Kit had recovered enough to fight and trek without a limp. He even gifted the line producer a bottle of whiskey as an apology for the chaos. Most fans never noticed, but Jon Snow's Season 3 survival owed as much to movie magic as to the Night's Watch. Varys almost sat on the Iron Throne, at least in the casting room. Conleth Hill, who famously played the Spider, originally auditioned for a very different role, King Robert Baratheon. Hill read for the boisterous, hard-drinking king, but when he saw Mark Addy in the waiting room, he thought he'd be perfect for it. And he was. Addy landed Robert, leaving Hill without a part. But producers remembered him. Later, they asked him to audition for Varys instead, having him before key moments like the dungeon scene with Ned Stark and the monologue about being cut by a sorcerer. He nailed it, but was told he'd have to shave his full head of hair for the part. Hill agreed, and the rest is Thrones history. Ironically, he later joked that missing out on Robert was lucky. Robert died in 1 season, but Varys lasted all 8. The Game of Thrones showrunners once terrified Rose Leslie with a fake script, making her think Ygritte had to sing on camera. David Benioff and D.B. Weiss knew Leslie, who played the fiery wildling Ygritte, was terrified of singing in public. So they crafted a bogus script page based on a song from George R.R. Martin's book, The Last of the Giants. In the prank scene, Ygritte was supposed to perform the entire 20-line ballad solo in front of Jon Snow. Leslie received the page and panicked, believing she'd actually have to sing it during filming. She even started preparing, nervously imagining how to pull it off. Finally, Benioff and Weiss revealed the truth. There was no singing scene. It was all a prank. Leslie was relieved and maybe a little annoyed, but the joke became one of the show's legendary behind-the-scenes stories. Alfie Allen once thought Theon Greyjoy was being killed off because the Game of Thrones showrunners pranked him with a fake script. At the end of Season 2, Allen received what he believed was the final scene. Bran Stark confronting Theon and stabbing him in the heart, declaring, "This is my Winterfell, not yours." Alfie completely bought it. He didn't panic or call the producers. He actually thought it was a cool ending and went on holiday believing Theon's story was over. Meanwhile, David Benioff and D.B. Weiss waited for him to freak out, only to be shocked at how calmly he accepted his death. Eventually, they confessed it was all a prank. Theon wasn't dying, and Alfie would be back for more suffering in Season 3. Even the cast wasn't safe from Throne-style twists. Sometimes they happened off-screen. Shay's entire vibe in Game of Thrones was rewritten for TV, and George R.R. Martin was into it. In the books, Shay is a Lannister camp follower. She never truly loves Tyrion. She's there for the gold, plain and simple. But on the show, George said she's much more sincere in her love for Tyrion. That change gave their relationship real emotional weight and made her betrayal sting so much more. Another big switch, her origin. In the books, she's just a nobody from Westeros, but on the show, she's from Lorath, one of the free cities. Why? The actress, Sibel Kekilli, had a German accent, and the showrunners liked her so much they tweaked the backstory to make it work. Jon Snow actually punched Ramsay Bolton in real life. During the Battle of the Bastards, fans cheered as Jon pummels Ramsay to the ground. But behind the scenes, Kit Harington got so into the moment that he accidentally landed 2 real punches on Iwan Rheon's face. Kit immediately apologized, horrified that he'd hit his co-star for real. "I had to buy him a pint after that one," he joked. Iwan, ever the good sport, laughed it off. Jaw hurt a bit the next day, but it's understandable. The fight was tightly choreographed, but the intensity of Jon's rage and Kit's commitment made it easy to slip. Cameras even caught Kit breaking character mid-scene to check on Iwan, hugging him once the take ended. Fans love to joke that Kit simply did what everyone wanted, punch Ramsay Bolton for real. Honestly, no one seemed too mad about it. The youngest Game of Thrones stars were once told their wrap-up would be at McDonald's. In 2009, after filming the original pilot, 14-year-old Sophie Turner and Maisie Williams were excited to celebrate with the cast, until producers told them they were under 18 and couldn't attend the real wrap-up party. Instead, they'd have their own party at McDonald's. The girls burst into tears, heartbroken at the thought of missing out. Only later did the pranksters reveal the truth. They were allowed in the actual party. But the relief sparked more tears as they realized the pilot might not be picked up and this could be their last time together. Thankfully, HBO greenlit the show, and Sansa and Arya stayed side by side for 8 seasons. The McDonald's prank became one of Sophie and Maisie's funniest and most emotional early memories from Westeros. Game of Thrones show actually changed the character so much that George R.R. Martin decided to rewrite her in the books. Osha the Wildling, played by Natalia Tena, is witty, sharp, and full of sarcastic energy on screen. But in the books, she's older, taller than Robb Stark, with a dour face and shaggy brown hair, described as hardly looking like a woman. Still, George loved Tina's performance so much, he said it would influence how Osha appears in future novels. That's incredibly rare for him. And remember that scene where Osha seduces Theon? Yeah, that's not in the books. Instead, she tricks him by pretending to serve him as a fighter, swearing loyalty just to earn freedom of movement. While Theon was busy bedding Kyra, a different girl entirely, Osha used the opportunity to help Bran and Rickon escape. Same results, very different path. The Red Wedding was so brutal, Catelyn Stark's actress couldn't speak to anyone for a week. Michelle Fairley delivered one of TV's most haunting performances as she watched Robb and his wife butchered before her eyes. Her raw screams, that vacant hello look as Catelyn's throat is cut, weren't just acting. The scene was filmed over multiple takes and angles, and by the end, Fairley was emotionally wrecked. Crew members described the set as silent after shooting, some even moved to tears themselves. Richard Madison, who played Robb, admitted he was sobbing uncontrollably too. But Fairley took it the hardest. She went AWOL after filming Wrapped, unable to speak to anyone, including the showrunners, for almost a week. "I've never felt anything like it," she later said. That's how deep she went into Catelyn's heartbreak, giving a piece of her soul to one of the most unforgettable moments in Game of Thrones history. The actor who played the Mountain in Game of Thrones broke a 1,000-year-old Viking record in real life. In 2015, while fans knew Bjornsson as Sir Gregor Clegane, the 6'9" Icelandic strongman competed in World's Strongest Viking. His challenge: carry a 10-meter, 1,433-pound log on his back, nearly 650 kilograms, for as many steps as possible. According to Norse legend, no one had ever managed more than 3 steps before collapsing. He smashed the ancient record and triumphantly declared, "I am the king of the Vikings." This real-life feat mirrored his on-screen persona. The same man who crushed skulls on HBO was conquering impossible weights off-camera. He later went on to win World's Strongest Man in 2018, proving he wasn't just acting. He really was a mountain of a man. Melisandre's actress was nearly cast as Cersei Lannister. Carice Van Houten, the Dutch star who brought the Red Woman to life, was first approached in 2010 to audition for Cersei in Season 1. She wanted to do it, a great part, she later said, but filming another movie meant she couldn't make the audition. That twist of fate cleared the way for Lena Headey's unforgettable Cersei and for Carice's own fiery destiny. When Season 2 rolled around, Thrones called again, this time for Melisandre. Her very first day on set, the infamous Shadow Baby birth scene, Carice later admitted she was terrified. She had to play confident, seductive, and otherworldly, all in one take. "I was myself," she joked, but you never know it watching the episode. From almost lioness to fiery priestess, Carice Van Houten's Thrones journey proves some casting what-ifs turn out perfectly. Yara Greyjoy's actress almost got fired before she even filmed a scene. When Gemma Whelan landed the role in Game of Thrones Season 2, she was overjoyed. Like any excited newcomer, she updated her online CV and casting profile to proudly include Yara Greyjoy, Game of Thrones. Big mistake. Her casting was supposed to be top secret, and the internet immediately went wild with speculation. HBO freaked out. A producer pulled her aside and said, "This is very serious. We almost can't employ you because of this." Mortified, Gemma quickly deleted the listing and learned a harsh lesson in spoiler security. Luckily, the showrunners gave her a second chance. From that moment on, she kept everything airtight. No selfies, no hints, no leaks. And good thing too, because Yara went on to become one of the show's most beloved Ironborn warriors. Sometimes even pirates have to follow the rules. Did Lannister gold cause the doom of Valyria? One wild fan theory says yes. Long before Game of Thrones, House Lannister spent a fortune buying the Valyrian steel sword, Bright Raw. That gold? It allegedly fueled chaos in the Valyrian Freehold. The idea is that rival Dragon Lord families used the Lannisters' payment to hire faceless men assassins, wiping out key mages who kept Valyria volcano stable. With those sorcerers gone, the 14 Flames erupted, and the legendary Doom destroyed the greatest empire in history. Is it true? There's no hard evidence, but it is a tantalizing what-if that ties Westeros' richest family to the greatest cataclysm ever known. Margaery Tyrell's actress is also a marathon runner. Natalie Dormer didn't just master King's Landing's politics, she conquered 26.2 miles of London pavement. In April 2014, right as Game of Thrones Season 4 aired, Dormer ran the London Marathon in an astonishing 3 hours, 50 minutes and 57 seconds, under 4 hours. She joked she was annoyed because she missed her personal best by mere seconds, and then, unbelievably, showed up to the Thrones premiere the very next morning in high heels. 2 years later, she did it again. Another London Marathon, another sub-4 hour finish. Dormer used the races to raise money for charities like the NSPCC, balancing grueling trailing with filming demanding court scenes in corsets. She'd said long runs actually helped clear her head from work stress. Margaery might prefer the rose gardens to the running track, but Natalie Dormer proved she's got a warrior's heart beneath that royal smile. Tyrion Lannister's actor ignited a Hollywood debate over Snow White. In 2022, Peter Dinklage slammed Disney's live-action remake for still including 7 dwarfs, calling it backwards. His comments went viral, forcing Disney to rethink how those characters would appear. No more beards and mining hats. But instead of universal praise, backlash came from within the dwarf acting community. WWE star Dylan Hornswoggle-Postel blasted Dinklage, saying 7 dwarf jobs are gone because of this guy, accusing him of speaking as if he were King Dwarf and ignoring how roles like these provide rare opportunities. The debate highlighted a tricky question. Does reimagining classic stories for sensitivity erase roles for actors who rely on them? Dinklage stood by his words, but the controversy became one of Hollywood's loudest discussions on representation versus employment. Even today, fans argue whether Disney's rewrite was progress or a miss. 2 of Game of Thrones' fiercest queens have both played the same legendary action heroine. Emilia Clarke, who ruled as Daenerys Targaryen, stepped into the role of Sarah Connor in Terminator Genisys 2015, taking up the shotgun and fighting Skynet in a rebooted timeline. But before that, Lena Headey, our very own Cersei Lannister, portrayed Sarah Connor in the TV series Terminator: The Sarah Connor Chronicles 2008. That means 2 sworn enemies from Westeros, the Mother of Dragons and the Lion Queen, both became the mother of humanity's future savior. Fans love pointing out this bizarre trivia crossover. 2 rival queens, both destined to protect Jon Connor instead of burning King's Landing. It's one of those Hollywood coincidences that feels almost scripted, proving Westeros royalty can apparently handle killer robots too. Mahershala Ali, yes, the 2-time Oscar winner and future Blade, once auditioned for Game of Thrones and calls it the worst audition of his life. Back in 2011, Ali tried out for the role of Zarozon Daxus, the flashy merchant prince of Qarth in Season 2. He'd prepped his lines, nailed the accent, felt ready, until he walked into the casting room and saw a backless stool. The awkward seating threw him completely off, leaving him stiff and distracted. Ali later laughed about how badly it went. One of the worst auditions I'd ever done. The part went to Nonso Anonzi, who famously locked Daenerys' enemies and himself in that vault. But even casting director Nina Gold later admitted, "Wow, how could I have turned down Mahershala Ali?" Proof that even legends bomb auditions sometimes. Talissa Major isn't the TV version of Jean Westerling. She replaces her entirely. In the books, Robb Stark doesn't fall in love with some exotic battlefield nurse from Volantis. He's lightly wounded while taking the Crag, a Westerland's castle held by House Westerling. There, Jean Westerling, a Lannister bannerman's daughter, tends to him. When Robb learns of Bran and Rickon's deaths, he's devastated. In a moment of grief, he sleeps with Jean. The next morning, with a clear head and a strong sense of Stark honor, Robb does what Ned Stark would have done. He marries her to preserve her honor. It's not a whirlwind romance. It's not passion. It's duty. That one decision wrecks his alliance with the Freys and helps seal the Red Wedding. Talissa, by contrast, is a creation of the show. But Book Robb? He didn't die for love. He died for honor. Daenerys Targaryen's entire storyline in Season 2 of Game of Thrones was mostly made up just to keep her on screen. In the second book, A Clash of Kings, Dany only has 5 chapters. That's it. While Westeros erupts in war, she's stuck in Essos with no army, no allies, and no one taking her seriously, just like her brother Viserys before her. The showrunners didn't want to sideline her, so they padded her arc. She spends 4 full episodes wandering the Red Waste before even entering Qarth. That's a third of the season gone just to stretch things out. And even after she gets to Qarth, they had 5 more episodes to fill. So the show invents subplots, like the Warlock stealing her dragons, which never happens in the books, just to keep Daenerys in the spotlight. It wasn't about story, it was about screen time. Nikolaj Coster went from Kingslayer to Climate Crusader. After Game of Thrones, he mixed acting with global advocacy, proving he's more than Jaime Lannister. In 2023, he starred alongside Jennifer Garner in Apple's TV's thriller The Last Thing He Told Me, playing a man whose mysterious disappearance drives the story. But off-screen, he's become a passionate environmentalist, hosting the 2024 documentary series An Optimist's Guide to the Planet. The series follows him around the globe, spotlighting innovative solutions to climate change. Costa hasn't abandoned film either. He co-wrote and starred in Netflix's Arctic survival drama Against the Ice and led the gritty crime thriller God is a Bullet in 2023. Up next, he's headlining the sweeping historical drama King and Conqueror, even stepping behind the camera to direct an episode. Now in his mid-50s, he's evolved into a multi-hyphenate star and UN Goodwill Ambassador. Maisie Williams once tricked the entire Game of Thrones fandom into thinking Arya died in Season 8. On April 1st, 2019, April Fool's Day, Maisie appeared on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. Fallon playfully begged her for spoilers, and after some teasing, Maisie nervously slipped. She whispered, "The final days were really emotional because I found out Arya died in the second episode." The studio audience gasped. Maisie covered her mouth, eyes wide, looking horrified as Fallon promised they could edit it out. She even ran off stage in apparent panic, leaving the crowd in stunned silence. Moments later, she and Fallon burst back out yelling April Fools. The prank was so convincing that clips of Maisie spoiling Arya's death went viral before people realized the date. Fans went from traumatized to impressed. It turned into one of the most legendary Thrones publicity stunts ever. Karl Turner from Game of Thrones was never supposed to be a big deal. In the books, he's just a background mutineer loosely based on a guy called Clubfoot Karl. The real ringleader of the mutiny is a different character entirely. But when the show decided to revisit the Night's Watch traitors in Season 4, they cast Bern Gorman, a skilled, recognizable actor, and gave Karl a brutal backstory to make him a proper villain. None of that happens in the books. Bran and Jon never cross paths with the mutineers. There's no dramatic showdown at Craster's Keep. Sam mentions they're stealing food and Craster's wife, but their fate is left vague. In fact, 5 of the betrayers are killed off-page by a mysterious figure named Cold Hands, who helps guide Bran north. What happened to the rest, or to Craster's surviving wives? The books leave it hauntingly unclear. Cersei Lannister versus the Night King. Who was the better villain? One played the long game with politics, manipulation, and ruthless ambition. The other brought an unstoppable undead army and a winter that could have frozen the world. Cersei ruled King's Landing through fear, wildfire, and carefully placed betrayals. She didn't just fight her enemies, she destroyed them completely, even if it meant burning half the city. The Night King didn't need words or alliances. He was pure, inevitable death, raising fallen soldiers with a wave of his hand and marching south to wipe out every living thing. So, who truly left the bigger mark on Westeros? Was it the Queen who tore kingdoms apart from within, or the Icy King who nearly ended them all? The Game of Thrones show turned Robb Stark into a flawless hero, but the books tell a much more tragic story. On screen, Robb is a noble boy king who dies because of love. But in the books, he's a brilliant commander and a terrible politician, just like his father, Ned. Robb wins every battle he fights, but loses the war with every decision he makes. He trusts the Greyjoys and sends Theon home, only to be betrayed. He refuses to back Stannis or Renly, which costs him the chance to ally with House Tyrell. That mistake lets the Lannisters triple their forces and crush Stannis at Blackwater. And the worst, he chooses personal honor over political survival. He knows marrying Jean Westerling will ruin his alliance with the Freys, but does it anyway because he slept with her. Robb didn't die for love, he died for honor and poor strategy. Jaime Lannister vs Sir Barristan Selmy. Who walks away alive? We're talking about 2 of the greatest swordsmen in the history of Westeros. Jaime in his prime, fast, arrogant, but deadly precise, a man who could cut down the Kingsguard best without breaking a sweat. Then there's Barristan the Bold, older in the later books, sure, but with decades of battle behind him. He faced kings, cut through armies, and earned his place in every song about chivalry and honor. If they met one-on-one, would Jaime's youthful speed and aggression overwhelm the older knight? Or would Barristan's patience, cunning, and sheer experience turn the tide? No allies, no tricks, just steel on steel. Who do you think takes the win? What would have happened if Ned Stark had stayed in Winterfell? Think about it. No beheading, no betrayal, no war. If Ned had refused Robert's offer to be Hand of the King, the Starks would have remained safe in the north. Jon Arryn's death might still be a mystery, but Ned wouldn't be walking into the Lannisters' trap. Without his honor clashing against Cersei's secrets, maybe the Seven Kingdoms could have avoided tearing themselves apart. But then again, tensions were already rising. The Lannisters still wanted power. Daenerys still lived across the sea, and the North was already drifting from the south. Would the realm have stayed at peace, or would the storm have come anyway? History in Westeros turns on the smallest decisions. Robb Stark versus Jon Snow. Who was the better leader? 2 wolves, 1 crown, but only one could truly deserve it. Robb Stark, the young wolf, crowned king in the north at just 17, undefeated in battle, inspiring his men with both honor and courage. He fought for vengeance and independence, and for a time it seemed nothing could stop him. Jon Snow, the reluctant leader who never sought power, yet united the Night's Watch, the Wildlings, and even Daenerys Targaryen's forces against the dead. He made hard choices, often sacrificing his own happiness for the greater good. Both had the heart of a king, but neither ever sat the Iron Throne. So, who was the better king that never was? The young wolf or the white wolf? What if Rhaegar Targaryen had beaten Robert Baratheon at the Trident? One swing of Robert's warhammer changed the fate of Westeros forever. But imagine if it had gone the other way. No Robert on the Iron Throne, no Baratheon rebellion. The Targaryen dynasty would have continued, with Rhaegar as king and his father, the Mad King, likely pushed aside. Some say Rhaegar was a thoughtful, just man who loved music, prophecy, and the people. Others argue he was obsessed with destiny, willing to start a war over a vision. Would his reign have brought peace and stability, or would the realm have burnt just the same, only under dragon banners instead of stags? So, which would you choose, Rhaegar's rule or Robert's reign? There's a hidden Game of Thrones detail that teased Jon Snow's true parents years before the reveal. For seasons, fans debated whether Ned Stark, the most honorable man in Westeros, could really have fathered a child out of wedlock. The truth, revealed late in Season 7, was far more shocking. Jon Snow was the son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark, Ned's own sister. But eagle-eyed viewers spotted the clue long before the show told us. In one scene carved into a wall beside Jon, you can clearly see the letters R and L. At the time, it looked like random markings. In hindsight, it's a quiet but perfect nod to Rhaegar and Lyanna. Whether it was intentional foreshadowing or a happy coincidence, it's one of those details that make you want to rewatch everything. There's a case of Game of Thrones foreshadowing, but it didn't come from the writers. It came from Lena Headey herself. Fans will never forget about Oberyn Martell's brutal death in Season 4, the moment the Mountain literally crushed his skull in one of the show's most shocking scenes. But 2 months before it aired, Lena Headey, Cersei Lannister, posted a photo on Instagram that secretly gave the ending away. In the picture, arranged in stone, was a very clear image of a red heart with a spear through it. Fans at the time just thought it was artsy, but once Oberyn's fate aired, it clicked. The red viper's heart, pierced by his duel with the Mountain. Was it a sly wink to book readers, or a total spoiler hidden in plain sight? Either way, savage move, Lena. Levi Littlefinger might just be the most underrated prophet in Game of Thrones. In Season 4, while consoling young Robin Arryn after his mother's sudden exit through the moon door, Littlefinger delivers one chilling line. People die at their dinner tables. They die in their beds. They die squatting over the chamber pots. Everyone dies sooner or later. It sounds like a cold lesson about life in Westeros, but it's actually a perfect prediction of the season's biggest deaths. King Joffrey, dead at the wedding feast, the infamous Purple Wedding. Shae, killed in bed by Tyrion himself. And Tywin Lannister, shot on the privy with a crossbow in one of the show's most iconic scenes. Coincidence? Or was Littlefinger playing a much deeper game all along, when Arya killed that Frey soldier right after the Red Wedding? In the show, Arya and the Hound stumble on some Frey men bragging about desecrating Robb's body, even sewing Grey Wind's head onto him. Arya quietly approaches, pretends to offer a coin, then suddenly stabs one of them again and again. It's brutal, shocking, and a clear turning point. The little girl from Winterfell is gone, replaced by someone fueled by vengeance. But in the books, Arya doesn't take this step so soon. In A Storm of Swords, when she and the Hound encounter the Frey men, it's Sandor who kills them, not Arya. Her first personal kill actually comes later under very different circumstances. HBO gave her this early revenge moment to drive home how much the Red Wedding hardened her. So, while Martin held back Arya's descent, the show pushed her into the darkness faster, when Theon was tortured by Ramsay in Season 3. In the show, it's some of the most disturbing material in the series. Ramsay toys with Theon through twisted mind games, even pretending to free him, only to crush that hope with more cruelty. His infamous line, "If you think this has a happy ending, you haven't been paying attention," sent chills down viewers' spines. Eventually, Ramsay castrates Theon off-screen, leaving him broken, humiliated, and transformed into Reek. But in the books, this is handled differently. In A Storm of Swords, most of Theon's torture happens off-page. Readers only see the aftermath. Ramsay's sadism is implied, not shown, and that gruesome scene where he sends Theon's severed manhood in a box to Balon Greyjoy, that's pure HBO invention, designed to underline just how monstrous Ramsay is. So, while the novels keep things in shadows, the show dragged us through every step of Theon's torment. Jaime finally told the truth about killing the Mad King. In the show, it happens in the Harrenhal bathhouse. Feverish and wounded, Jaime suddenly opens up to Brienne. He explains that Aerys planned to burn all of King's Landing with wildfire, and Jaime stopped him the only way he could, by breaking his oath. His voice cracks as he relives it, years of pain and scorn pouring out. By the time he collapses, whispering, "My name is Jaime," instead of Kingslayer. The scene completely reshapes how we see him. And this comes almost word for word from the book. In A Storm of Swords, Jaime's confession to Brienne is just as raw and heartbreaking. George R.R. Martin gave us the truth behind the Kingslayer's name, and HBO delivered it with perfect weight. It's the moment Jaime Lannister went from villain to tragic, complicated hero, when Melisandre used leeches filled with Gendry's blood in that creepy ritual on Dragonstone. In the show, she calls it King's Blood and has Stannis throw the leeches into the fire one by one, naming his rivals Robb Stark, Balon Greyjoy, Joffrey Baratheon. It's chilling to watch, especially since all three of those kings die not long after. Was it dark magic or just dark coincidence? In the books, the ritual is almost the same, but the victim is different. In A Storm of Swords, Stannis doesn't have Gendry. Instead, he has Edric Storm, Robert's acknowledged bastard son, on Dragonstone. Melisandre leeches Edric's blood for the same curse, and Davos later smuggles him away to save his life. So, while HBO used Gendry to tighten the story, Martin used Edric to explore Stannis' growing desperation. Either way, the question remains, did the blood kill the kings, or fate itself? When Jon refused to kill the horse breeder and finally turned on the wildlings. In the show, the wildlings captured an old man and demand Jon prove his loyalty by executing him. But Jon can't do it. Instead, he strikes back, kills their skin changer, and escapes on horseback. Ygritte watches in anguish, torn between love and betrayal, and even shoots him with arrows as he rides away. It's heartbreaking. Their romance shatters in that instant. In the books, the scene is similar, but less personal. In A Storm of Swords, Jon also refuses to kill the innocent man and fights his way out. Ygritte does shoot him, but it happens in the chaos. He's struck in the leg, not in a drawn-out goodbye. HBO stretched the moment into a more emotional face-to-face parting, giving the doomed couple a painful send-off. Either way, it's the end of Jon and Ygritte's love story, when Cersei shut down Littlefinger with the line, "Power is power." In Season 2, Littlefinger smugly tells her, "Knowledge is power," hinting at his control of secrets. But Cersei doesn't even blink. She orders her guards to seize him, then release him, proving her point before dropping that cold, unforgettable line, "Power is power." But here's the thing, that entire exchange, it never happens in the books. In A Clash of Kings, Cersei and Littlefinger never have this standoff. The line was completely invented for the HBO series, and yet it became one of her most iconic quotes, arguably more famous than anything George R.R. Martin gave her in that moment. So, while the show gave us a mic drop scene, the book actually builds Cersei's authority in subtler ways, through plotting, manipulation, and her growing rivalry with Tyrion. When Arya first started her infamous kill list. In the show, it begins with a conversation with Yoren while she's hiding among the Night's Watch recruits. Arya is terrified and grieving, and Yoren tells her his own story. How he whispered a man's name every night before sleep until he finally got his revenge. That haunting advice inspires Arya's ritual of reciting names, turning her fear into focus. But in the books, it plays out differently. In A Clash of Kings, Arya does create her list, whispering names before bed. But Yoren never gives that speech. The entire backstory about revenge as a bedtime mantra was written for the show. So while Martin shows Arya's transformation through her own thoughts and trauma, the HBO version gives her a guiding spark from Yoren, one of the series' most memorable invented moments. Jon Snow's death in Game of Thrones was actually handled very differently in the books. In the show, it's brutal and emotional. Jon is lured into the courtyard by his Night's Watch brothers and stabbed repeatedly. Each blow feels like betrayal, and the final strike comes from Ollie, a show-only character added just to twist the knife. The motive? Jon let the wildlings pass the wall. But in the books, it's far more complex. Yes, Jon helps the wildlings, but what really gets him killed is the pink letter, supposedly from Ramsay Bolton. It enrages Jon, and he makes a near treasonous decision to march on Winterfell. That's when the knives come out. The show ends with a confirmed death, but the book, Jon's fate is left uncertain. His final whispered word isn't Ollie, it's Ghost, a haunting detail that lingers. The Game of Thrones show completely cut out one of the biggest wildcards in the entire saga. While Tyrion's journey in the show is all about reaching Daenerys and playing political chess in Meereen, the books take a shocking turn by introducing young Griff. He claims to be Aegon Targaryen, Rhaegar's son, who supposedly died as a baby during Robert's rebellion. But surprise, he's alive, raised in secret by Jon Connington and groomed to take back the Iron Throne. His existence throws everything into chaos. Suddenly, Daenerys isn't the only dragon in the race. The real twist, we don't even know if he's truly a Targaryen, or just a very convincing pawn in Varys and Illyroy's long game. Cutting him from the show may have simplified things, but it erased one of the saga's most mind-bending what-if scenarios. The Red Wedding wasn't the end of Catelyn Stark's story, at least not in the books. On the show, it's unforgettable. Robb is betrayed, Talissa is stabbed in the belly, and Catelyn has her throat slit in one of TV's most shocking scenes. But in the books, there's an eerie twist. After her death, Catelyn's body is tossed into the Green Fork, a final insult to Tully traditions. But she's not left there. Arya's direwolf, Nymeria, pulls her from the river, and the Brotherhood Without Banners finds her. Beric Dondarrion sacrifices his life to resurrect her. She returns as Lady Stoneheart, a vengeful, corpse-like figure with a torn throat and no mercy. As the Brotherhood's ruthless leader, she hunts and hangs Freys, Lannisters, and anyone tied to the Red Wedding. The show cut her entirely, and honestly, that choice killed off one of the saga's most haunting arcs. Tyrion's journey to Daenerys in the Game of Thrones show is wildly different and way simpler than in the books. On screen, it's a fast-paced buddy trip with Jorah moment. There's some slavery, a fighting pit cameo, and boom, Tyrion suddenly advising Daenerys like he's been there all along. But in the books, his journey is long, dark, and brutally messy. He travels with a whole new cast of characters like young Griff, a potential Targaryen heir, and Jon Connington. There's political scheming, betrayals, mistaken identities, and a slow descent into bitterness. Tyrion is eventually enslaved and forced into the fighting pits, stripped of his power and pride. By the time he nears Meereen, he's a wreck, sharp-tongued but jaded, dangerous, and deeply changed. The show gave us speed, but the books gave us scars and a richer, more tragic evolution. The Game of Thrones show absolutely butchered the entire Dawn storyline. On screen, Prince Doran Martell is made to look weak and clueless, quickly assassinated by Ilaria Sand in a clumsy coup. Ariana Martell, his daughter, heir, and one of the most politically intriguing characters in the books, doesn't even exist in the show. What we get instead is a rushed revenge plot, awkward dialogue, and fight scenes that fans still cringe about. But in the books, Dawn is a simmering pot of political schemes. Prince Doran is anything but passive. He's playing the long game, secretly planning to marry Ariana to Viserys Targaryen and later support Daenerys. Ariana herself is fierce, intelligent, and challenges both tradition and her father's secrets. Her presence adds real depth to the Martell legacy. Cutting her didn't just simplify the plot, it erased the soul of Dawn's story. So Barristan Selmy's death in the Game of Thrones show was totally different, and honestly, kind of unfair. In Season 5, he's ambushed by the Sons of the Harpy in Meereen. It's brutal, bloody, and he fights like the legend he is, cutting down foes left and right. But sheer numbers overwhelmed him, and just like that, he's gone. But in the books, Sir Barristan survives. After Daenerys disappears on Drogon, he takes charge of Meereen, navigating its brutal politics with quiet honor. His chapters are filled with strategy, reflection, and loyalty, not just swordplay. He brings real depth to Daenerys' rule, acting as a seasoned, stabilizing force during absolute chaos. By killing him off early, the show trimmed the story for time, but at the cost of a great character arc. The books give him purpose, the show gave him shock value, and honestly, he deserved better. Arya and Gendry's hookup in Game of Thrones Season 8 doesn't happen at all in the books. In the show, right before the Battle of Winterfell, Arya suddenly seeks out Gendry for a romantic moment that caught nearly everyone off guard. It was intimate, sure, but also felt kind of rushed, especially for a character who spent years becoming a faceless assassin. In the books, it's a completely different dynamic. Arya is only around 11, and her bond with Gendry is more like that of siblings or close friends. He teases her, protects her, and they share a scrappy, endearing companionship. But romance, nowhere to be found. The show aged Arya up to allow for this plotline, but it still felt awkward. Honestly, Arya's too focused on survival, revenge, and her identity crisis to worry about romance. Not every character needs a love story, and Arya definitely didn't. Sophie Turner had to stop washing her hair for Game of Thrones. In the early seasons, Sansa Stark's hair was always immaculate, befitting a high-born lady of Winterfell. But by Season 5, Sansa's story turned darker, and the producers wanted her to look like she'd been living through hell. Their solution? They told Sophie to stop shampooing entirely. For weeks on end, she walked around with what she called pretty greasy hair. It got oily, itchy, and uncomfortable. So much so that she wore hats offset just to hide it. It was really disgusting, Sophie later admitted, laughing about how authentic the grime was. Thankfully, by Season 7, they switched her to wigs, and Sophie celebrated finally being able to shower again. But that stretch of unwashed hair explains Sansa's bedraggled look during her captivity. It wasn't just makeup, it was real. Authenticity has its price, even if it's personal hygiene. Euron Greyjoy in the Game of Thrones show is basically a watered-down pirate compared to his book version. On screen, he's all swagger, smudged eyeliner, and bad one-liners. He shows up out of nowhere, builds an entire fleet overnight, and acts like a rock star more than a serious threat. But in the books, Euron Crow's-Eye Greyjoy is terrifying. He's a mysterious, charismatic figure steeped in dark lore. He drinks shade of the evening like the warlocks of Karth. He may have explored the ruined lands of Valyria. And he carries a horn, dragon binder, that's said to control dragons. There's real fear surrounding him, like he's less man and more something cursed. Where the show gave us a flamboyant raider, the books give us a nightmare in human skin. It's one of the biggest downgrades in the adaptation, and honestly, a massive missed opportunity. Sansa Stark's story in the Game of Thrones show completely skipped one of her most empowering arcs from the book. On screen, she barely spends time in the Vale before being forced to marry Ramsay Bolton, a plotline that sparked serious backlash for turning her into a victim again. But in the books, Sansa never marries Ramsay. In fact, she doesn't even leave the Vale. Instead, she lives under the alias Elaine Stone, hiding with Littlefinger while secretly learning the Game of Thrones. She watches, listens, and slowly transforms from a scared girl into a sharp political player. Littlefinger's even plotting to marry her into House Arryn and use her claim to Winterfell in his grand scheme. This version of Sansa isn't about trauma, it's about growth, strategy, and survival. Cutting that arc robbed us of one of the best slow burn character developments in the series. Ygritte's death in Game of Thrones was far more emotional on screen than in the books. In the show, it's heartbreaking. Ygritte dies in Jon Snow's arms during the battle at Castle Black, whispering her iconic last words, "You know nothing, Jon Snow." It's raw, tragic, and gave us one of the series' most unforgettable goodbyes. But in the books, it's colder, grittier, and far more brutal. Ygritte is hit by an arrow during the chaos, and Jon only finds her body later, already dead. There are no final words, no dramatic reunion, just silence and snow. It's a moment that perfectly captures George R.R. Martin's style. Love doesn't always get closure. Honestly, while the book stays true to its harsh realism, the show's change also worked. That emotional punch landed and gave Jon and Ygritte the goodbye they deserved. Arya's direwolf, Nymeria, plays a way bigger role in the books than she ever did on the show. In Game of Thrones Season 7, Arya has a short, emotional reunion with Nymeria, just a brief encounter before the direwolf walks away with her pack. It's sweet, but also kind of underwhelming. In the books though, Nymeria is a force. She's not just surviving, she's leading a massive wolf pack that terrorizes the Riverlands. And here's the wild part, Arya walks into her through dreams. She hunts, kills, and runs with Nymeria in a way that shows her Stark instincts are still deeply alive, even as she trains with the Faceless Men. That deep mystical bond adds a whole new layer to Arya's identity. The show gave us a 30-second goodbye. The books give us a soul connection. Honestly, HBO dropped the ball. Daenerys' relationship with Daario is way more complicated in the books than the casual fling we saw on TV. In the Game of Thrones show, Daario's just her charming mercenary boyfriend. They flirt, sleep together, and then boom, she dumps him off screen like last week's news. It's spicy, but shallow. But in the books, it's a slow burn of temptation versus duty. Daario is flamboyant, dangerous, and unpredictable. He's everything Daenerys isn't supposed to want, and everything that tempts her. She's younger in the books, still figuring out how to rule, and her feelings for Daario pull her in two directions: desire and responsibility. He represents freedom and passion, but she's trying to be a queen. That inner conflict adds serious depth. The show stripped away all that nuance and turned it into a sexy side plot. But in the books, it's about identity, power, and self-control. The version of Euron Greyjoy in the Game of Thrones show barely scratches the surface of who he really is in the books. On screen, he's mostly there to deliver ships to Cersei, shout one-liners, and look vaguely threatening with smudged eyeliner. He forms an alliance with the Lannisters and plays a standard power game. But in the books, Euron is on another level entirely. He's feared by his own crew, rumored to dabble in the dark sorcery, and may have explored the nightmare ruins of Valyria. His goals aren't just crowns, they're cosmic. He wants to break the world. And here's the kicker, he and Cersei never even meet. their plots run on totally separate tracks. By merging them in the show, HBO reduced a horrifying eldritch villain into a genetic pirate sidekick. Book Euron is chaos. Show Euron is loud. The epic hard-home battle in Game of Thrones Season 5 doesn't happen at all in the books. On screen, it's one of the most jaw-dropping episodes. Jon Snow fights off Whites, the Night King raising the dead with a single gesture. It's action horror at its finest, and it left us shook. But in the books, we never go to Hardhome. We only hear about it through ravens and scattered reports, tales of a massacre beyond the wall, with wildlings vanishing and whispers of something awful rising in the cold. The horror comes from not knowing what really happened. The others stay in the shadows, unknowable and unstoppable. The show gave us a spectacle. The books gave us dread. And honestly, sometimes what you don't see is scarier than what you do. Tyrion's injury at the Battle of Blackwater is way worse in the books than what the show portrays. In Game of Thrones, Tyrion takes a sword to the face and ends up with a pretty gnarly scar. It's dramatic, but not disfiguring. He still looks like, well, Peter Dinklage. But in George R.R. Martin's novels, Tyrion's wound is brutal. He loses most of his nose. It's not just a battle scar, it's a physical symbol of how the world chews him up and spits him out. This matters because Tyrion is already hated for being a dwarf. Losing half his face isolates him even more, deepens his bitterness, and adds a darker edge to his choices later in the story. Sure, the show toned it down for practical reasons, but in doing so, they blunted one of Tyrion's most powerful transformations. Lysa Arryn's death in Game of Thrones was way more tragic in the books than the TV show lets on. On TV, it's a quick shock moment. She screams in jealousy, Littlefinger smirks, and boom, she's gone through the moon door. It plays like a dramatic soap opera twist. But in the books, her fall is a slow-motion tragedy. Lysa is already broken, paranoid, unstable, and emotionally fragile. Years of isolation and her twisted love for Peter Baelish have rotted into obsession. By the time she dies, you don't just see a jealous woman, you see someone completely manipulated and discarded by the man she trusted most. It's not just a murder, it's the final nail in a life of quiet suffering. The show gave us drama, the book gave us heartbreak, and a chilling reminder of how ruthless Littlefinger truly is. Pycelle and Kevin Lannister die very differently in the Game of Thrones books compared to the show. On screen, Pycelle gets stabbed by Qyburne's child assassins, and Kevin is blown up with the Sept of Baelor. It's dramatic, explosive, and kind of rushed. But in the books, their deaths are chillingly calculated. In A Dance with Dragons, Kevin is shot in the chest by Varys. As he's bleeding out, he sees Pycelle already lying dead nearby, head bashed in. This wasn't random. It was strategy. Varys wants chaos in King's Landing so young Griff, a boy claiming to be Rhaegar's son, can step in and seize power. No wildfire, no spectacle, just shadows, crossbows, and political murder. Honestly, it's way scarier. The show gave us explosions, the book gave us Varys, quietly pulling the strings and reminding us the real danger doesn't always wear armor. Mance Rayder's fiery execution in the Game of Thrones show is totally different from what happens in the books. On TV, it's emotional. Stannis orders Mance burnt alive, and Jon shoots him through the heart to spare him the agony. It's dramatic, but that's not how it goes down in the novels. In the books, Melisandre burns Mance at the stake, but it's not actually him. It's Rattleshirt, glamoured to look like Mance using shadow magic. The real Mance is alive, in disguise as a bard named Abel, sneaking into Winterfell to rescue the girl being passed off as Arya Stark. This twist adds layers of deception, shows off Melisandre's magic, and keeps Mance in the game. The show went for shock. The book went for clever political survival. Personally, the book's version is way more satisfying and keeps the chessboard interesting. One of the most chilling moments in the books, the pink letter, was barely acknowledged in the Game of Thrones show. In A Dance with Dragons, Jon Snow receives a letter, supposedly from Ramsay Bolton. It reads, "Your false king is dead, bastard. I have his magic sword. Tell his red ore, their heads are on the walls of Winterfell. Come see them, bastard." It's pure psychological warfare. Ramsay claims he's crushed Stannis, taken Lightbringer, and demands Jon's surrender. But is it real? Or is he bluffing? That uncertainty drives Jon to make a bold decision, to march on Winterfell. And that choice leads directly to his betrayal at the Wall. The show waters it down, skipping the tension, fear, and mystery that makes the letter unforgettable. It's one of the series' most underrated, haunting moments, and they left it on the table. The Sand Snakes in Game of Thrones were nothing like their book counterparts. On the show, they're basically walking cliches, slinging poison daggers, trading cringy one-liners, and stirring chaos and dawn with all the grace of a wrecking ball. Then, just like that, they're killed off with barely any fanfare. It's messy and forgettable. But in the books, each of Oberyn's daughters has real depth. Obara is a hardened warrior. Nymeria is cold and calculating. Tyene hides deadly ambition behind sweetness. They're not just fighters, they're political players with different versions for Dawn's future. Their presence actually means something. The show turned them into caricatures. The books made them dangerous, driven, and complex. Honestly, Dawn went from being a power keg of vengeance and politics to filler content that barely made a dent. And the Sand Snakes deserved so much better. The mysterious Cold Hands in Game of Thrones is way creepier and way more mysterious in the books. In the show, Cold Hands is just Benjen Stark, half dead, stuck between life and death, riding in to save Bran and later Jon like an undead Uber driver. It's convenient, but kind of underwhelming. In the books, Cold Hand is not Benjen. He's an ancient, rotting figure who rides a giant elk, controls ravens, and can't even pass through the wall. He speaks like a man, but something about him feels off. Bran and the Reeds wonder, was he once a Night's Watchman, or something far older? His presence is eerie because we don't know what he is. That mystery makes him powerful, a ghost of the North, a hint at how little we truly understand about death, magic, and the Wall. By giving him a name, the show took away the fear. One of the deepest wounds in Tyrion's life was completely left out of the Game of Thrones show. In the series, Tyrion's trauma centers on Shay's betrayal and Tywin's cruelty. But in the books, there's a whole other heartbreak: Tysha. When Tyrion was young, he fell in love with a girl named Tysha and secretly married her. But when Tywin found out, he forced Jaime to lie, telling Tyrion she was just a prostitute Jaime hired. Tywin then had her ganged by his guards while Tyrion watched. Years later, just before Tyrion kills Tywin, Jaime finally confesses. Tysha wasn't a whore. She truly loved Tyrion. This truth shatters Tyrion. It's the breaking point that pushes him to kill, not just out of anger, but deep, festering betrayal. Leaving Tysha out robbed us of the key to Tyrion's pain and his descent. The Game of Thrones show cut one of the creepiest parts of Cersei's prophecy. In the flashback, young Cersei asks Maggie the Frog about her future. Maggie tells her she'll have 3 children. Gold shall be their crowns, and gold their shrouds. It's chilling, sure, but the books go way further. Maggie adds, "And when tears have drowned you, the Valancourt shall wrap his hands around your pale, white throat and choke the life from you." Valonqar means little brother in High Valyrian. Cersei becomes obsessed, convinced it means Tyrion. But here's the twist. It could just as easily mean Jaime, her twin and literal younger brother. The irony? Cersei spends her life fearing the wrong person, and her response? You're a liar, a smelly old savage, and I don't believe a word. That arrogance might just seal her fate. Game of Thrones completely cut one of the juiciest Dornish plots from the books. In A Feast for Crows, Princess Arianna Martell hatches a daring plan to crown Marcilla as queen, sparking political chaos across Westeros. It's full of ambition, betrayal, and exactly the kind of Martell scheming the show desperately needed. But HBO skipped it entirely. And with that cut, we also lost one of the edgiest knights in the series, Sir Gerald Dane, aka Darkstorm. He's brooding, dangerous, and carries one of the cringiest lines in all of A Song of Ice and Fire. When Marcilla asks if he's the new Sword of the Morning, he replies, "No, men call me Darkstar, and I am of the night." Yep, that's the line. Still, love him or hate him, cutting Arianna and Darkstar erased a whole layer of Dawn's depth and danger. Kevin Lannister once delivered one of the coldest lines in A Song of Ice and Fire, and the show left it out entirely. In A Feast for Crows, reports come in from the Riverlands. Sandor Clegane, the Hound, is supposedly raiding and killing. Cersei jumps at the chance to use it politically, trying to twist the narrative in front of the court. She says, "Bring us Sandor's head, and I know his grace will be most grateful. Joffrey may have liked the man, but Tommen was always afraid of him, with good reason, it would seem." Kevin doesn't miss a beat. He replies, "When a dog goes bad, the fault lies with his master." Brutal. In one line, he calls out Cersei, Joffrey, and the whole rotten system they built. It's one of the quiet book moments that says everything. The faceless men in A Song of Ice and Fire are low-key sexist towards Arya Stark. In the Game of Thrones show, Arya trains with them and becomes a deadly assassin. But in the books, her journey is way more complex and uncomfortable. Early in her training, Arya is told she must give up her name, her past, even her identity. But there's a moment that hits harder than most. The kindly man tells her, "When I look at you, I see a child. And worse, a girl child. We bring the gift of death. No one can do both." Translation: girls don't belong here. It's one of the few times Arya faces open doubt. Not because of her skills, but because of her gender. And still, she endures. She learns, but she never stops being Arya Stark. They wanted no one, but she was never just anyone. Maester Aemon's final words in A Song of Ice and Fire may be the most important prophecy in the entire series. While Melisandre clings to visions of fire and shadow, Aemon, blind and dying, sees through the illusions. On his deathbed, he tells Sam, "Melisandre has misread the signs. The sword is wrong. An empty glamour. The false light leads only to darkness. Daenerys is our hope. Tell them that, at the Citadel." It's a heartbreaking moment. Aemon, the last Targaryen of his generation, puts his faith not in R'hllor's flames, but in Daenerys. Not as a conqueror, but as the world's last real hope. He charges Sam to spread the word, to guide her, to protect her. It's wisdom versus fire, reality versus illusion. And even in death, Maester Aemon's clarity outshines every burning sword. Cersei and Jaime's relationship is even more tragic and twisted in the Song of Ice and Fire books. On the show, their bond is toxic, sure. But in the books, it's a battlefield of love, resentment, and broken promises. After Tywin's death, Cersei begs Jaime to be her hand, to rule the Seven Kingdoms with her. But Jaime, bitter and disillusioned, replies, "You were Robert's queen, and yet you won't be mine." And then the dagger twist. Tommen is no son of mine, no more than Joffrey was. You made them Roberts too. Cersei flinches. Her reply, "You swore that you would always love me. It is not loving to make me beg." This isn't romance, it's ruin. Their love, once reckless and passionate, is now laced with power plays and betrayal. They're not just lovers, they're prisoners of each other. Daenerys' iconic dragon birth in Game of Thrones is way more intense and symbolic in the books. In the show, she steps into Drogo's funeral pyre, and by morning she walks out, untouched, hair flawless, cradling 3 baby dragons. It's epic, dramatic, and gave us the birth of the Mother of Dragons. But in the books, it's not magic immunity, it's sacrifice. Daenerys walks into the fire knowing she might die. When she emerges, her hair is burnt away, her skin blistered, and yet she's alive. The dragons aren't just born from the flames, they're born from her pain, her courage, her total surrender. It's not about being unburnt, it's about being reborn. The show's version was cinematic, but the book's version, it felt mythic. More than a cool scene, it was a transformation, and honestly, a legendary moment of earned power. Game of Thrones cut a major character whose story is pure tragedy and political weight. Jon Connington, the Kingmaker. Once Hand of the King and Lord of Griffin's Roost, Connington was a proud and ambitious man, loyal to Rhaegar Targaryen above all else. But that loyalty cost him everything: his title, his honor, and the lands of his ancestors. Banished in disgrace after failing to stop Robert Baratheon, Connington lived in exile, haunted by what could have been. Years later, he returns, carrying a deadly secret and backing a boy who might be Aegon VI Targaryen, Rhaegar's surviving son. He says, "I rose too high, loved too hard, dared too much. I tried to grasp a star, overreached, and fell." Jon Connington isn't remembered for his power, but for how bitterly he lost it. And that's what makes him unforgettable. Jon Snow wrestled with the urge for revenge after the Red Wedding, but duty kept his sword sheathed. In the books, after Ron and Catelyn are murdered, Jon is torn apart. He burns for justice against House Lannister, but as Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, his oath ties him to the realm, not to vengeance. He tells Sam, "It's death and destruction I want to bring down upon House Lannister, not scorn." But then lifts a letter and reminds himself, "The Night's Watch takes no part in the wars of the Seven Kingdoms. Stannis aids us, but we are not his men." This moment reveals Jon's greatest strength and greatest burden. He's a Stark at heart, but a watcher on the wall in practice. And that clash of identity makes his choice hurt all the more. Even leaders feel rage. The best ones choose restraint. Stannis Baratheon once offered Jon Snow a wildling princess for marriage. Her name is Val, and she's no damsel in distress. She's sharp, fearless, and fiercely loyal to her people. To Stannis, she's a political pawn. Marrying her to Jon could unite the free folk and the North. Axel Florence says, "A noble girl, not hard to look upon. Good hips, good breasts, well made for whelping children." But Jon's not buying it. He has his vows and his honor. Tormund jokes, "She won't mind, will you, girl?" Val, patting her bone knife, replies, "Lord Crow is welcome to steal into my bed any night he dares. Once he's been gelded, keeping those vows will come much easier for him." Yeah, Val's not here to be claimed or courted. She's her own force of nature. And that's exactly why fans love her. Tyrion Lannister teams up with a female dwarf named Penny during his journey across Essos in the books. While the Game of Thrones show skips her entirely, A Dance with Dragons gives us Penny, a clever, practical woman who travels with Tyrion through rivers, slave ships, and political chaos. Their bond is awkward, tragic, and surprisingly human. At one point, Tyrion gives her some grim advice. "Are you a maid, Penny?" "Yes, of course. Who would have? Stay that way. Love is madness, and lust is poison." He warns her not to chase dreams like Ser Jorah does with Daenerys, because Tyrion knows the cost of loving the wrong person and the empty promises of kings and queens. It's one of those moments where Tyrion's sarcasm hides deep scars and shows just how much he's learned. That in A Song of Ice and Fire books, Tyrion meets a young man claiming to be Aegon Targaryen, the supposedly dead son of Rhaegar. The show skips this completely, but in the books, Tyrion travels with young Griff and quickly realizes he's no ordinary boy. He's clever, proud, and ambitious, but hesitant to invade Westeros without Daenerys and her dragons. That's when Tyrion delivers one of his political plays. Westeros is torn and bleeding. Be certain you reach Westeros before my sister falls, and someone more competent takes her place. When Aegon asks how he could win without Daenerys, Tyrion replies, "You do not need to win. All you need to do is raise your banners and hold." Tyrion isn't just advising a prince, he's forging one. In that moment, we see it. Words can spark wars, and strategy can crown kings. Jon Snow's time as Lord Commander in the books is way more political and way more intense than the show lets on. In A Dance with Dragons, Jon isn't just leading the Night's Watch. He's also stuck navigating Stannis Baratheon's ambitions at the Wall. Every conversation feels like walking a tightrope between duty and diplomacy. And when Melisandre drops this line, "His Grace is growing fond of you," Jon replies, "I can tell. He only threatened to behead me twice." Melisandre laughs, then warns, "It is his silence you should fear, not his words." That sums it up. Jon is surrounded by fire priests, kings, and enemies, yet still leads with calm faith and quiet strength. No dragons, no fanfare, just hard choices and heavier burdens. This version of Jon shows that true leadership isn't flashy. It's lonely, complicated, and earned. Power plays in Westeros are not only fought on battlefields, but also in stolen spaces. In A Feast for Crows, Jaime Lannister takes host to Tully Solar as his own seat of command after Riverrun surrender. Let's see how Edmure feels about this in the books. "That was my father's Solar," says Edmure. "He ruled the Riverlands from here, wisely and well. He liked to sit beside that window. The light was good there, and whenever he looked up from his work, he could see the river. When his eyes were tired, he would have Cat read to him. Littlefinger and I built a castle out of wooden blocks once, there beside the door. You will never know how sick it makes me to see you in this room, Kingslayer. You will never know how much I despise you." Jaime's response, "I have been despised by better men than you, Edmure." Sadly, the show skipped this venom. The books gave us Edmure spitting fire and Jaime brushing it off like a man swatting a fly. That in A Song of Ice and Fire books, Tyrion doesn't just hate his family, he wants them dead. After killing Tywin, Tyrion's rage doesn't cool. It curdles into something darker, revenge. While traveling with Illyroy in A Dance with Dragons, he doesn't just brood. He makes a promise. He says, "A Lannister is not a lion, yet I am still my father's son, and Jaime and Cersei are mine to kill." That's not a joke. It's not a quip. It's a blood oath, delivered with ice in his voice. The show softened Tyrion, making him the clever heart of Team Daenerys. But in the books, he's broken, bitter, and dangerous. You start to wonder, if he ever returns to Westeros, what's stopping him from becoming judge, jury, and executioner? Tyrion hasn't forgotten, and he never forgives. So Jorah Mormont despises Tyrion in the books, and it all comes down to one unforgivable act. Tyrion killed his father, Tywin Lannister, and for Jorah, that makes him a kinslayer, a title cursed by gods and men. Their journey together is tense, with that crime hanging in the air like a sword. At one point, Jorah growls, "To kill your own sire. How could any man do that?" Tyrion fires back, "Give me a crossbow and pull down your breeches, and I'll show you." Jorah, "You think this is a jape?" Tyrion, "I think life is a jape. Yours, mine, everyone's." Even under judgment, Tyrion never flinches. His armor isn't steel, It's sarcasm. And in that moment, we see why people fear him, because he'll laugh in the face of every sin, even his own. In the novels, Cersei finds herself forced to watch Margaery Tyrell play the part of the perfect queen. And unlike the show's toned-down rivalry, the books lets us dive deep into Cersei's mind, where every word from Margaery feels like poison dipped in honey. So when Margaery says she loved Joffrey dearly, Cersei's true thoughts hiss forth in her mind. Liar, if you had loved him even for an instant, you would not have been in such unseemly haste to wed his brother. His crown was all you ever wanted. The truth is, for half a groat, she would have slapped the blushing bride right there upon the dais, in view of half the court. Simply put, Margaery's charm is Cersei's curse, and every smile she offers is a blade twisting deeper into the queen's pride. Jaime once thought he and Cersei were the hero and maid, but there is a moment in A Feast for Crows where he realizes they're the villains. In The Sept, while watching Lancel embrace the faith, he confronts the bitter truth of his own choices and Cersei's deceptions. This is where Jaime's thoughts turn darker. I thought that I was the warrior and Cersei was the maid, but all the time she was the stranger, hiding her true face from my gaze. Finally, in that moment, Jaime stops seeing a love story and starts recognizing a curse. Jon Snow may wear the cloak of Lord Commander, but it often feels more like chains. The brothers he once laughed with now look to him for decisions, and every smile reminds him of what he's lost. Where the show pushed him quickly into command, the books make us sit with his loneliness, the constant reminder that leadership means distance. There's a time when Pip mocks Melisandre's faith. Jon steps in, not as a friend, but as a man responsible for holding together a fragile peace between Stannis' men and his own. He wants to share their supper and to belong again, yet knows he cannot. Unfortunately, that bond is gone, severed by duty. That's when his father's words echo back to him. A lord may love the men that he commands, but he cannot be a friend to them. One day he may need to sit in judgment on them, or send them forth to die. And so rises Jon Snow, Lord, Commander in name, prisoner in truth. Qyburn had a plot to kill Jon Snow. That's right. In the books, while the show skipped over it entirely, Qyburn and Cersei schemed to send loyal men to the Wall. But their loyalty would be to Tommen, not the Watch, with one mission in mind: end Jon Snow's command before he grew too powerful. While the council discusses the Night's Watch, Qyburn seizes the moment with a chilling proposal. For years now, he says, the Night's Watch has begged for men. Lord Stannis has answered their plea. Can King Tommen do less? His Grace should send the Wall 100 men to take the Black ostensibly, but in truth, to remove Jon Snow from the command. Cersei finishes, thinking Jon won't suspect a thing if he's like his father. To Cersei, this was confirmation. Putting Qyburn on her council was no mistake. After all, when others brought swords, he brought daggers sharpened with whispers, and that's exactly the kind of weapon she loved. Davos gave one of the best speeches about vengeance in A Song of Ice and Fire. In the books, Davos Seaworth stands before Lord Wyman Manderley, trying to rally the North to Stannis. But outnumbered, out-talked, and mocked, Davos is dismissed as a failure. This powerful moment never made it to the show, but in the books, when words fail him, Davos doesn't back down. Instead, he finds another weapon: truth. Death. There will be death. I, Davos says. Your lordship lost a son at the Red Wedding. I lost 4 upon the Blackwater. And why? Because the Lannisters stole the throne. Go to King's Landing and look on Tommen with your own eyes, if you doubt me. A blind man could see it. What does Stannis offer you? Vengeance. Vengeance for my sons and yours. For your husbands and your fathers and your brothers. Vengeance for your murdered lord, your murdered king, your butchered princes. Vengeance. With those words, Davos spoke with a power no banners could summon. In the show, Daenerys' marriage to Hizdahr zo Llarich was dry politics. In the books, though, we see the truth up close. Hizdahr is a partner she tolerates, not desires. His kiss is hollow because her passion belongs elsewhere, and that's never clearer than in the moment when we see her true thoughts. When Daenerys was kissing Hizdahr, she was thinking of Daario. Let's see how the books shows it. "Shall I kiss you again?" Hizdahr asks after kissing the queen. "No," Daenerys replies, comparing how the little fish in her bathing pool kiss with more fervor than Hizdahr. "I do not love you." Hizdahr shrugs. "That may come in time. It has been known to happen that way. Not with us," she thinks. "Not whilst Daario is so close. It's him I want, not you." Now, isn't that ironic? Daenerys can conquer cities, but she can't conquer her own heart. Just like Theon Greyjoy, Robb Stark actually needed multiple swings to chop off Rickard Karstark's head. The axe crashed down, heavy and well honed. It killed at a single blow, but it took 3 to sever the man's head from his body. And by the time it was done, both living and dead were drenched in blood. Robb flung the poleaxe down in disgust and turned wordless to the heart tree. He stood, shaking with his hands half clenched and the rain running down his cheeks. "Gods forgive him," Catelyn prayed in silence. "He is only a boy, and he had no other choice." Jaime and Cersei Lannister's mother, Joanna, actually caught them in the act when they were kids. He could never bear to be long apart from his twin. Even as children, they would creep into each other's bed and sleep with their arms entwined. Even in the womb, long before his sister's flowering or the advent of his own manhood, they had seen mares and stallions in the fields, and dogs and bitches in the kennels, and played at doing the same. Once their mother's maid had caught them at it. He did not recall just what they had been doing, but whatever it was had horrified Lady Joanna. She'd sent the maid away, moved Jaime's bedchamber to the other side of Castle Rock, set a guard outside Cersei's, and told them that they must never do that again, or she would have no choice but to tell their Lord Father. They need not have feared though. It was not long after that she had died birthing Tyrion. Jaime barely remembered what his mother had looked like. Cersei Lannister responded in a different way when immediately learning about her father Tywin's death. "No, that cannot be. That is not the way a lion dies." The queen felt strangely calm. She remembered the first time she had lost a tooth, when she was just a little girl. It hadn't hurt, but the hole in her mouth felt so odd she could not stop touching it with her tongue. Now there is a hole in the world where father stood, and holes want filling. If Tywin Lannister was truly dead, no one was safe. Least of all, her son upon his throne. When the lion falls, the lesser beasts move in. The jackals and the vultures and the feral dogs. They would try to push her aside, as they always had. She would need to move quickly, as she had when Robert died. This might be the work of Stannis Baratheon, through some catspaw. It could well be the prelude to another attack upon the city. She hoped it was. Let him come. I will smash him, just as father did, and this time he will die. Stannis did not frighten her, no more than Mace Tyrell did. Jaime Lannister considered openly marrying Cersei and emulating the Targaryens after their rumored incest came to light in Westeros. Perhaps Stannis Baratheon and the Starks had done him a kindness. They had spread their tale of incest all over the Seven Kingdoms, so there was nothing left to hide. Why shouldn't I marry Cersei openly and share her bed every night? The dragons always married their sisters. Septons, lords, and small folk had turned a blind eye to the Targaryens for hundreds of years. Let them do the same for House Lannister. It would play havoc with Joffrey's claim to the crown, to be sure, but in the end, it had been swords that had won the Iron Throne for Robert, and swords could keep Joffrey there as well, regardless of whose seat he was. We could marry him to Marcilla once we've sent Sansa Stark back to her mother. That would show the realm that the Lannisters are above their lords, like gods and Targaryens. We get the immediate reaction from Cersei Lannister when she learns that Shae was also found dead near her father Tywin. My Lord Father had no use for oars, she thought. After our mother died, he never touched a woman. She gave the guardsman a chilly look. This is not. When Lord Tywin's father died, he returned to Castle Rock to find a woman of this sort. bedecked in his lady mother's jewels, wearing one of her gowns. He stripped them off her, and all else as well. For a fortnight she had paraded naked through the streets of Lannisport to confess to every man she met that she was a thief and a harlot. That was how Lord Tywin Lannister dealt with Oars. He never. This woman was here for some other purpose, not for... Perhaps his lordship was questioning the girl about her mistress, Qyburn suggested. Sansa Stark vanished the night the king was murdered, I have heard. That's so. Cersei seized on the suggestion eagerly. He was questioning her, to be sure. There can be no doubt. She could see Tyrion leering his mouth twisted into a monkey's grin beneath the ruin of his nose. In the show, Littlefinger schemed in shadows. But in the books, his plots cut deeper. With Elaine, or Sansa, his fatherly warmth curdles into manipulation, and his every word is a dagger wrapped in silk. Here, Littlefinger delivers one of his sharpest takes on the state of the realm. You would not believe half of what is happening in King's Landing, sweetling. Cersei stumbles from one idiocy to the next, helped along by her counsel of the deaf, the dim, and the blind. I always anticipated that she would beggar the realm and destroy herself, but I never expected she would do it quite so fast. It is quite vexing. I had hoped to have 4 or 5 quiet years to plant some seeds and allow some fruits to ripen, but now it is a good thing that I thrive on chaos. What little peace and order the 5 kings left us will not long survive the 3 queens I fear. Now, that's not just gossip. It's Littlefinger quietly savoring the storm he helped create. That the children of the forest and weirwood trees are so much more fascinating in the books. The trees don't just witness, they remember. Through Jojen Reed's talk with Bran, George R.R. Martin reveals their profound bond of memory, magic, and nature. A reader lives 1,000 lives before he dies, says Jojen. The man who never reads lives only one. The singers of the forest had no books, no ink, no parchment, no written language. Instead, they had the trees, and the weirwoods above all. When they died, they went into the wood, into leaf and limb and root, and all the trees remembered. All their songs and spells, their histories and prayers, everything they knew about this world. Maesters will tell you that the weirwoods are sacred to the old gods. The singers believe they are the old gods. Simply put, the weirwoods are living archives of a forgotten world, carrying voices that still echo through the silence of Westeros. HBO once spent over $30 million on a Game of Thrones prequel that never aired. After the original show ended, the network greenlit a pilot set during Westeros, Age of Heroes, starring Naomi Watts. George R.R. Martin even suggested calling it The Long Night. Fans were excited. The series promised a fresh era with no Targaryens and a brand new story thousands of years before the main saga. But after filming, HBO executive watched the finished pilot and decided it just doesn't work. In a shocking move, they scrapped the project entirely, eating the massive cost. The cancellation sparked huge debate. Had HBO lost confidence in expanding the Thrones universe? Or were they simply cutting losses on a misfire? Ultimately, the network pivoted to House of the Dragon, which went straight to series and became a hit. The axed pilot remains one of TV's most expensive what-if moments. Melisandre warned Jon Snow about his own assassination long before the knives ever came out. In A Dance with Dragons, her prophecies swirl around fire and shadow, but sometimes her words cut like blades. She tells Jon, "It's not the foes who curse you to your face that you must fear, but those who smile and sharpen their knives when you turn your back." Then adds, "Ice, I see, and daggers in the dark, blood frozen red and hard, and naked steel." Jon brushes it off, saying it's always cold at the wall. Melisandre leans in and whispers, "Then you know nothing, Jon Snow." It's one of the chillingest moments in the entire book, because just chapters later, he's betrayed in the snow by men who smile to his face. The fire saw it coming. Jon just refused to feel the heat. That in A Song of Ice and Fire, Peter Baelish teaches Sansa to play the Game of Thrones through quiet manipulation and razor-sharp words. While the Game of Thrones show leans into shock value and trauma, the book gives us something slower, more chilling. Sansa, disguised as Elaine Stone, flinches at the mention of Cersei, fearing discovery. Littlefinger, ever the tutor, drops this icy gem. Even the humblest pieces can have wills of their own. Sometimes they refuse to make the moves you've planned for them. Mark that well, Elaine. It's a lesson that Cersei Lannister still has yet to learn. That's not just a warning. It's strategy. Littlefinger isn't just manipulating Sansa, he's molding her, teaching her that power is about patience, observation, and knowing when to strike. It's subtle, sinister, and completely brilliant. Anyway, subscribe for more. And when you get the chance, check out our Game of Thrones inspired Choose Your Own Adventure game here on YouTube by clicking the video link on the screen right now.